Hey everybody, welcome to the Hang Up right here on the line on Wednesday, just as normal. I'm Matt Dillahunty. No, I'm not the Amazing Randy. I would wish I was the Amazing Randy, except that since he's no longer with us, I'd rather be alive. But yes, the beard's getting fuzzier and grayer and all that stuff. I hope you're all doing well. I received an email, and it happened to coincide with the fact that tonight's guest is going to be Dr. Darrel Ra from the Recovering from Religion organization and psychotherapy and things like that. But I received this email. I have not replied to it. And I'm going to warn you in advance. This is an email it's difficult to hear and to deal with. It's one of the reasons I haven't replied. But I will be replying to this person at some point, maybe directing them to this show. What I've done is I have scrubbed any verifiable contact information from the email and left it largely intact. I removed a few lines because he has children and described things about his children. I've put that in a summary to the side, but this is a little long, and I want you all to listen to it because encouraging people to say I don't know, and then having places where people can email and call in for help puts me in a position where I hear stuff like this from many people, and I often don't know what to do. So here's the email. Hi, Matt. I'm a frequent viewer of your show, and you were pivotal in validating my angry feelings that I felt when I left Mormonism. I spent countless nights watching clips from the atheist experience where you tear apart the irrationalism of any number of religious beliefs that callers had. I want to thank you for your dedication over the years to continuing having those conversations while other hosts that I also liked have moved on and disappeared. It's now been 8 years since I left Mormonism. I have maintained my life trying to live as secular as possible and align my thoughts and actions with the ideals of secular humanism. However, I'm in a really tough spot right now. I have 5 kids. Growing up Mormon, I always had the expectation that I would have a lot of kids, and I didn't get out of the Mormon church until after I had already had my 5th. I went through a lot of grief leaving Mormonism, and I vowed to try to keep my kids from having to go through that kind of pain by helping them see how false Mormonism's beliefs are. My 4 oldest kids all no longer believe in Mormonism. My youngest is 10 and still can't really comprehend the complexities of religious ideas and how they impact real life. I would have counted this as a win, except that the result has been devastating for the relationship with my children. This is where I've redacted. His kids are hurt, and they blame him, and some of those kids are now cutting him off. Continuing his email, though my oldest daughter has told me so many times she hates the teachings of the Mormon church, she doesn't see my efforts to help educate my kids as helpful, but harmful. Despite all my efforts to do what I think is right, they are interpreted as abuse. My divorce has been ugly, full of court cases, CPS investigations, police reports, attorneys, and all of it because my ex considers me to be the devil, and that any decrease in time that the kids have with their dad, the better off they are. My leaving the Mormon church caused all kinds of ill feelings towards me from numerous members of my family. And there's no telling how terrible what sort of terrible things they've been saying about me and that my ex and her family has to say about me to my kids and my whole community that used to be my church. So I'm at this self-reflective stage right now, wondering if I made a mistake. I don't doubt any of the rationalism or lack of fallacies in my thinking, and I'm sure you would validate that my conclusions about God and religion are sound. But what I doubt is the usefulness of it all. If I'd stayed Mormon, towed the line, stayed married, stayed in the church and in the tribe, I perhaps would not be estranged by my daughters and potentially more of my children. I'm not abusive. I've never laid a hand on my kids. I have no criminal record, and yet anything I say is distrusted by my family, my children, and my ex. I can't be sincere with them without them thinking I have an angle. So again, I ask myself if it was worth it. What do I have to offer my kids? Freedom from religious prison? On the other hand, my kids see my ex in her Mormon community with people rushing to her aid, people constantly visiting, people bringing meals, and the church providing food and a job and support and hugs and aid. They see all the support that she receives, and they turn my direction and see me all alone. I don't have this type of community anymore. I do have friends, but they don't have the understanding of what it's like to leave Mormonism, and I've tried to make it that way in order to heal and feel normal. The kids don't see dad attend a large group that gives them instant friends and instant community. and activities and love. They see dad's life as authentic and vulnerable and liberal. It's not easy out here. I don't have a role model of anyone in my family who's left the church and had to raise a family on their own away from church support. I can only guess what would be best for the kids, and I'm constantly fighting against what may be good for them, but is also something that the church teaches. And so I have to decide if it's actually good for their development or if it's a Mormon statute that is just there to control their feelings to sway them to be manipulated. It's hard out here in the real world. While I'm pretty darn sure I made the correct decision, I don't know if I made the right decision for my kids or my sanity. One thing that I think you do that gets so many people to watch the show and was so validating in my grief during my own journey is that you roast callers, or at least roast their ideas that end up being BS. And while I think it gets lots of clicks and is popular, I've learned the very hard way that normal interactions with family and friends in this manner does not help maintain those relationships. When I started trying to reach out to my family to warn them about the dangers of Mormonism that I had discovered, where I thought I'd be met with gratitude for helping them see the light, I was met with disdain and hatred. My words and my push to share the dirty laundry of the Mormon church with my family only ostracized them from me. It wasn't until years later that I humbled myself and apologized for being so disrespectful. While this was not a totally authentic way to say it, it did the trick, and I now have a tolerable relationship, though still strained and lacking in total trust, with most of them again. However, my ex is hell-bent on making sure that the kids know that I'm a terrible father. The whole community shares their feelings about me, I'm sure, and the kids have been poisoned by their words. I feel like I'm in a battle for my kids against 1,000 Mormons, and I only have myself, while they have a 2-century-old developed religion with more resources than a small country. So again, I ask, was it worth it? If there are 1,000 stories that you hear of people so happy that they got out of religion, how many are there who are too tired and depressed to speak up, who feel like getting out of religion ruined their lives? Maybe not ruined. Maybe it's so that I feel at a loss for how to live authentically without the organization of religion. I grew up in the religion. I knew what I would do in every phase of my life, or at least attempted to. Now I have no idea. I may never see or hear from my 2 oldest kids ever again. Would it have been that way if I never left? If I just shut my ears a little more and was a little dishonest with myself, would I be in a place where I'm happier than I am now? Anyway, I didn't know who else to talk to about this and thought you might have some thoughts. Thanks for listening. And so I've read that email 3 or 4 times now, trying to figure out exactly how best to respond. I didn't suffer any crisis of nihilism or of incredible loss. I made a conscious decision that if my family members, including my parents, my brother, whoever, if my family members couldn't appreciate me for me, then I didn't need to interact with them at all, if that's what they wanted, or at anything more than a surface level, which is what has happened for some of them. I may be weird. I cared more about being appreciated for me than maintaining relationships with people just because we had relationships all that time. I had my periods of sadness where when certain people cut me off, or on the 1 or 2 instances where I cut somebody else off, there was some sad reflection there, but it felt like this was okay. But I didn't have kids. I didn't have a family of 5 kids with a full support network that my actions completely disrupted. I made a decision that I'd cut people off, but that was a decision for me. This individual, like many others, is struggling in a way that I can empathize with, but I have difficulty relating to because it's so different from my experience. I will end up replying to this email. I may just reply with a link to this show. Hopefully they're okay with me sharing this, since there's nothing about their name or anything else in here like that. Because I definitely recommend that they reach out to recoveringfromreligion.org. I would definitely recommend they reach out to seculartherapy.org. I would also recommend that they reach out to other secular organizations in their area, because what it seems that they're most missing is community. Well, what it seems they're most missing is their kids, community, and direction. that notion of being born and raised in a religious environment where you knew everything was going to happen in your life and now everything is turned upside down, you don't have that direction anymore, and you don't have that community. And Mormons, like other religions, are pretty good at ostracizing the people who depart the Mormon religion, the shunning that goes on. And it happens outside of Mormonism as well. And so while I would direct him to all of those resources, I don't know enough. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't ever pretend to. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not. I haven't been through what this person's been through. And I will say that, for example, when I read Greta Christina's book on coming out, where she interviewed like I think it was 400 people, and I think only one of them legitimately regretted coming out, even though many of them went through really bad times. It's one thing to find your way out of religion, go through a lot of suffering and conflict and relationship struggles and everything else, and still wind up happier at the end of it than not. And so I'm at least slightly comforted by the fact that this individual who sent the email seems to be in the minority based on the data that I've seen from Greta's book and from interacting with people at various conventions. By the way, if you aren't familiar with Greta's book, I haven't spoken to Greta in a long time, but I would highly recommend picking it up, as it was influential to many people in beginning to understand how to address how to come out, why to come out, what the benefits and values are, and what the risks are as well. And to know that you're not alone. It's incredibly difficult to build a community under the best conditions. It is incredibly difficult. It is nearly impossible to build a community when you are disadvantaged and in the disadvantaged position of being a maligned minority like secularists are. And so, as is the case when I don't know something, I reach out to the people around me. One of the fortunate advantages of knowing a lot of people in the community, I reach out to the people who know way more about this stuff than I do. And so one of the things I'm most happy about is that this email came in during the same week where Dr. Darrel Ra is joining me. So please welcome from recoveringfromreligion.org and psychotherapy.org, Dr. Darrel Ra, author of Sex and God and the God Virus. What do we do, Darrel? How do we help?
Well, that's a tough email. Wow. Yeah, that's a really tough one. I would just start by saying you're not alone. We get those kind of calls and chats and emails daily, practically. And you wouldn't be surprised that Mormons are they and Jehovah's Witnesses are right at the top of the list of all the things we get emails for. As you
Yeah.
read the book, I was trying to understand. It's impossible to sit here and 500 miles from you and much farther from whoever this person was, and know all the facts I need to know. But I will say this: everything he mentioned fits within a framework that we call complex grief, and that's something that's most people never heard of the term. They know what grief is. They know what grief and loss is. Nobody's heard about complex grief oftentimes, and
Mm.
it's yeah, I can explain it this way: if you had someone die, a parent, a child, a spouse, they died, then you would go through a grief and loss process. And it may take you 2 or 3 or 4 years, but you would get through it and reestablish a stability in your life and move on. That's normal grief. Complex grief is different. Complex grief oftentimes is found in somebody who loses someone really important to them, but they still are alive. So you've got 5 children who are still important to you, but they're still alive. So you really can't, and they want to cut themselves off from you, or at least that's what we're hearing here. And so you go through this grief process, and just about the time you think I'm now getting on the other side of it, they reappear in your life, or they give you a phone call, they send you a card, or something, or you see somebody that looks like them even in the store, and it triggers us all back, and you go right back. So it's a difficult thing to deal with, complex grief and loss. And so I would ask, as you've already mentioned, Matt, get a good therapist to help you work through this. And I think another thing, this person has identified perhaps one of the mistakes they made, and that is pushing. Uh, you can't go up to somebody and tell people, religion's all wrong. It rarely works that
Right.
way. So it sounds like that person did something around that line. So they understand, they're self reflective. And last, I
Yeah.
would just say be patient. Be patient. Kids come back. I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent. I've seen kids leave and I've seen kids come back. And there's not much you can do. You can't force them to come back, but you can be patient, be loving to them, be kind. Send them a birthday card. Always remember them. Even if they never remember you, always remember them. And that's the best way to have them perhaps come back. I don't know. Does that work for you, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. One of the things is, obviously I'll be emailing this person back. I don't always. There are other emails in my inbox, some of which I make a conscious decision not to reply to, and it's for not emails like this. It's, you know, hey, will you be on my podcast, or what do you think about this, or what, I'm not. My email isn't just like an advice column, but as somebody who's been in the movement for a while and watched this, and I mean, I remember sitting. I, I remember sitting at a tiny table at a PastaCon, um, me and you and Marlene, and I think it was there was one other person who was not far away, and you were talking about at this one, either you were talking about how you were just getting ready to start RFR or the psychotherapy project, one of them, and we'd been listening to people's stories um, about coming out, and you're there at a convention and you're interacting with other people who've found their way out and have struggled. And so there's at many of these conventions, and I know people who went to the conventions and never went to a single talk or lecture. They just hung out in the lobby or the bar and interacted with everybody else for an entire weekend. And good for them. Whatever it is that you need to get out of that, do it. By the way, we're going to have Nick Fish on the podcast or on the show next week to talk about um, the American Atheist Convention is coming up Easter weekend at the end of the month. So we'll have more about that. But conventions like those were some people's first opportunity to not just be around other non-believers, but to be around other non-believers in a bigger sense than, hey, there's six of us who are going to go down to the pub and complain about all the crap that's going on in our families. This is hundreds of people, many of whom been through some of the same things that you've been through. And it's one of the reasons why I always recommend people, yes, reach out to RFR, reach out to Psychotherapy Project, but try to find a secular community of some sort. And I'm not, I'm helping to build secular communities on occasion, whether it was with Atheist Community of Austin or what we're doing here with the Line. But I'm not the right guy to do that or run that, because after doing the debates and shows and lectures and all the other stuff throughout the week that I do, when I get my downtime, don't get me wrong, I love doing it when I get the opportunity. But when I have my true downtime, I'm not going to a secular convention to interact with a bunch of people, partly because it's if I'm not a speaker, I'm a distraction in some cases, but also because I just, the way I safeguard my time and my sanity is when when I've got my downtime, I use it for other stuff. I use it for Epic Loot Exotics, our reptile breeding stuff. And, um, I watch shows and I interact with, Arden and I might sit there and just laugh for a couple hours at all the silly crap that's going on. And then, worry about, is the world going to end? So when I get emails from someone like this, complex grief, which by the way, I have no expertise, but it seems to me that that's very similar to the sort of trauma of being um, triggered by when you mention seeing someone who appears to look like the person, even if they're not dead. There's out of all the relationships I've had, there's only one where uh, things were bad enough that I would get triggered and traumatized seeing someone who looked like that person. And I don't know that it ties to grief, but it's the closest I've come. I've lived with people who have various triggers, and for all the people out there who are like, oh, you snowflakes and your trigger stuff. Yeah. Until you've actually lived with someone who's suffering and watched their reaction to something like this, how dare you mock this stuff? I mean, I have really, I mean, people that I love and I'm close to who are strongly triggered by things that nobody would expect and nobody's ever going to get a warning for. And you don't know what's going on in somebody else's life. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still the same guy that's been hosting these shows for years. If you want to call in and defend your God belief, your religious belief, your political view, whatever it is, what you think I'm wrong about, whatever, by all means, call in. Lines are open, 720-619-2288. We've got one caller on right now that I'm going to get to in just a few minutes. But, you know, this isn't a softball thing. It is not, oh, Matt's turning over a new leaf and just going to be kind to everybody. No, I'll be kind of a dick on occasion because that's right. And I'll be kind of patient on occasion when that's right. And I will be kind. But how do you deal with, like, when I hear from parents who've like legit lost children to cancer and things like that, we all could sit here and go, no parent should ever have to go through the loss of a child. And similarly, no person should ever go through losing their entire community just because they don't agree anymore with the doctrine that can't and hasn't been demonstrated. The tactics of organizations like the Mormon Church, Jehovah's Witnesses, and others that involve the sort of shunning and everything else, this is absolutely vile. I'm not an expert. I don't toss around the word cult freely. I don't care if it technically classifies as a cult or not. I don't need to put it in a bucket. It's wrong. And it's absolutely wrong to take someone who's being intellectually honest and trying to live a good life and turn their kids against them. When your church is manipulating children, not just to be members of the church, but to also turn against their own parents who love them. I don't care if it's a cult or not. I don't care what label you put on it. That's monstrous.
Totally agree.
Well, we've got a caller here. Let's see where we're at. We have Emmanuel, pronouns he, him, calling from Connecticut. Awesome. How are you?
Hi.
How are you, Emmanuel?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm a little frustrated at the email, but you know, considering
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not in that
frustrating.
position, I'm a little better.
Yeah. Well, it's just super cool to talk to you. I recently discovered you. I discovered you through your debate with Jordan Peterson. And
Okay.
I just to say, I thought you were absolutely brilliant in that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Yeah, and so I've been checking out a lot of your stuff, and I think it's super cool. I am an atheist. Hope that's cool. But I
It
I do
doesn't
consider
matter,
myself
but
an atheist.
cool.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm an atheist, and I'm sort of just want to talk. I have something. I have sort of a thing I want to bring up that you might or may not disagree with. I'm not sure.
Oh, I disagree.
So
I've already seen what
so
the call screener wrote down. I know I disagree.
Okay. Okay. So you can see it wrote down. So yeah, so I wrote down that, I believe that, well, before I get there, I think it's interesting that, amongst a lot of atheist circles, outside of, well, you can see what I wrote down, outside of the objectivist movement, Ayn Rand isn't discussed very often. And I want to get your thoughts on why, and I have my own thoughts on why. And I think it's because, a lot of atheists are on the left, and a lot of atheists also don't believe in objective morality. And so, of course, Ayn Rand did believe in objective morality, and people consider her on the right, when I don't think they should consider her on the right, because I think in many different ways. But, so a lot of atheists lean left. She believed in objective morality. Yeah, so I believe, my claim here why I'm calling, I think, to your debate with Jordan Peterson, I thought you did a brilliant job, better than I ever could. I mean, I don't think I'm even close to being on your level intellectually, but I do think she has, I think just about every answer or every question that Jordan Peterson asked you, Ayn Rand has a good answer for. Like, I could get to some specifics, but yeah, I wrote down that I believe she bridged the is-ought gap. The David Hume is-ought problem. I believe she bridged that. And of course, I don't necessarily think she got everything right, but I do think she was right on this.
How do you bridge the is-ought gap? Because I once thought I did it too, and I was corrected live in a debate by a Christian theist. And I don't find Ayn Rand to be a particularly impressive thinker. She always struck me as a hack who was cribbing thoughts from other philosophers. I don't like her writing. And I can't be an objectivist. But if you think she bridged the is-ought gap, how?
Because she states that, so for example, she states that all living things have values and only living things have values, right? So, but, I'll go through this as quickly as I can, but it would take me a long time to go through her ethics. But, she believes, she ultimately comes to the conclusion.
No, hang on. We're trying to bridge the is-ought gap. For the people who don't know, Ayn Rand wrote Fountainhead and other things. A somewhat popular author and what some would consider to be the originator of objectivism and things like that. However, the is-ought problem, from David Hume pointing it out, is that you cannot derive an ought from an is. If Ayn Rand solved that, you don't need to talk about her moral foundation or anything along. You just have to talk about how can you possibly derive an ought from an is? What is can you present that leads to an ought?
Okay, so I guess I'll just state what it is, and then I'll just backtrack from there. So I believe that the is that your life is your ultimate value. Therefore, you ought to pursue your own value.
Yeah. So the statement, your life is your ultimate value, is not a factual statement. It is an opinion that it is an opinion that includes a subjective assessment that implies value. This is very similar to when I thought I solved the is-ought problem, I said you can't get from an ought to an ought from one is, but you can get from an ought to an ought from two ises. One, here is the facts, or here are the facts, and two, here is my goal. But as soon as I have a goal, I've smuggled an ought in. And when you say that she says your life is your ultimate value, first of all, that's not necessarily true. And even if it were true, that value is where you've smuggled an ought into it. You're not deriving an ought from an is, you are sneaking an ought into a statement. And it's not even necessarily a true statement.
Interesting. Okay, so that's interesting. But you stated earlier that it's subjective. But can it be subjective? Can it be objective if we're basing our observations on facts, and then we generalize through those concretes to create therefore objective abstract concepts? Because she states that she objectively, based on facts that she has observed, that we all can observe, come to the objective conclusion that life is the standard of moral value because all living things and only living things have values, and you only need values to live. Life makes values necessary. And so therefore, the only reason you need values is to live. Therefore, you cannot value anything else if you are alive. And therefore, you must value life first, because if you're not alive, you can't value anything at all. Therefore, your life, or life in general, or each individual's life, is the ultimate value. And therefore, life is the standard of value.
No, it's
therefore,
not. No,
your
it's,
life.
it's so it is a fact that I can't value anything if I'm not alive. But that doesn't mean that I should value being alive. How do you make the determination that I should, in fact, value being alive? What if I value not being alive?
But see, that's actually a very interesting question, and this goes back to your debate with Jordan Peterson. I think the most fascinating part of that debate. No, it doesn't
go back. No, stop. It doesn't go back to the debate with Jordan Peterson. I know it's an interesting question. It is the question. You are saying that one should value their life, but you are asserting that stop saying yes. That is the ought. You are saying one ought to value their life. What is the reason that one ought to value their life?
But it seems to me, I mean, you could correct me where it's wrong. This seems to me like...
Okay, we're going to pause a second. We're going to pause a second because I really don't want to be in a mood today. Here we go. Welcome to the Line Network. This is the Hang Up. If I ask a question of a caller, answer that question. Don't ask some other question, because that gets us nowhere. Answer that question. I have reasons for asking the question that I'm asking. And the question that I asked was this. You are asserting that one ought to value their life. What is the fact from which that assertion is necessarily derived? That's all I need to know.
Okay, so I don't owe you an answer, I don't think, because the only reason you need values is
then you don't need to stay on the then you don't need to stay on the show, because you called in to assert that she bridged this gap. Shut up. You called in to assert that she bridged this gap. And no, don't you tell me no. You called in to assert that she bridged this gap. I've had a conversation with you. I'm now asking you to justify the ought statement, and you're saying you don't owe me an explanation. So why should I let you continue to talk if you're not going to explain the very thing you called in to fucking explain? Interrupt me one more fucking time, I dare you. Now, are you going to demonstrate this ought or not?
I'll do my best.
Go for it.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't trying to be rude. I generally wasn't trying to be rude. I apologize. So I wasn't trying to be rude with my statement. I don't owe you an answer. I just think, what I was saying was that the only reason you need values is to live. So yes, you have to. So if you do choose to live, I'm not saying then the only reason you need values is to live. And then, so that is then.
My question was, you said someone ought to value their life. Why should someone ought to value their life? Last chance, because you're demonstrating you don't understand the topic right now, and you won't answer the question.
Okay.
What? For the last time.
My apologies.
For the last time, why ought someone value their life?
I guess I need to do more research on this. I appreciate the time. I'll go do more time. Okay. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I'm a big fan, and I'm going to continue to support you. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks. Just dig in more. All I'm doing is asking the same questions anybody would ask you on this subject. It's not like Emmanuel was, ridiculous. I thought I solved the same fucking problem. That's just the reason I know exactly what to ask you. And the reason that I know this, and we've already moved on from Emmanuel, is because I sat here and said, oh, well, of course you can't get from to an ought from an is, but you should be able to get there from two is, because two is. So here is my goal, and here are the facts from those two that should tell me exactly what I ought to do. But what I was doing is smuggling the ought in by stating what my goal is. And it's exactly the same thing that Emmanuel does. When you state that your goal should be to remain alive, you have smuggled an ought into that. It's perfectly laudable in the sense that we are the descendants of people who wanted to stay alive. We generally do everything we do to try and stay alive by and large. But there are times and places where not only is life not preferable to death, but death is in fact preferable to life. I have friends who are dealing with end of life issues, and for them, there's going to come a day when life is not their ultimate value, where an end of pain, an end to suffering is what they value most. And then you get into this weird dilemma of, well, hang on, I value living even if there is pain. You value no more pain more than you value living. Which one of us is right? And then you have to say, maybe both of us, maybe neither of us, maybe there is no right. And as soon as you recognize that there's always going to be an example with that conflict, you then can't get to the, you need to value your life. You can say that. Like, I don't want to speak for Dr. Darrel Ray, but I'm pretty sure that therapists, because we enter into therapy with this recognition that we do in fact value life, and we should be in most cases doing this. You can make ought statements as a therapist because somebody's told you what their goal is. I want to live a better life. If you want to live a better life, you ought to do this, this, and this. But if somebody says, I want to die, okay, now you can't give them the same oughts that you gave somebody who wants to live. And so now you're stuck in this position of which of your two preferences, continuing to live or not, or ceasing living, is the right one. And we're just stuck. It's what I find a lot of the people who are particularly impressed with Ayn Rand, they're coming into ideas kind of for the first time, and they're going to make the same mistakes that a lot of us make. It reminds me of The Matrix. When people first saw The Matrix, and for anybody who hadn't spent any time studying philosophy and understanding, the problem of hard solipsism, how do you tell that, am I the only mind? Anybody who hadn't thought about this, The Matrix was, for me, it was, oh, it's really cool. They're doing solipsism and everything. Oh, and the special effects were awesome. But yeah. They filmed it really well. We got other callers on the line, Darrel. I don't know if you had anything at all to add on to the Ayn Rand is aunt fan, but dig in.
Absolutely not. I'll leave Ayn Rand to you. Haven't got a time of day for that person. But could I back up one step and have one other thing I want to say about the email that you read. If the person's listening, and whether they are or not, I think the people who might identify might find this useful. When an immigrant leaves their country and enters a totally different country with a different language, that is really difficult. As you mentioned earlier, it's really difficult to lose your old community. Well, that is what our friend, the ex-Mormon, is experiencing. He's actually an immigrant. He has left the community and he's trying to find another community. He's immigrating to another community. And I've had so many people call in, all of our volunteers have, saying, when I left religion, I felt like I was born again, but in the bad way, not in the Baptist way. I was born again because I didn't have a clue how to operate in this new culture, in this new country. So for those of you who heard that email, realize that your complex grief is difficult to deal with, and you're an immigrant in a new land. And call Recover from Religion. We can help you find new communities close to where you're at. That's my back step there. Thanks for letting me do that. Matt.
Also, I have a couple quick announcements to make, and then when I'm done, but we'll move on to other calls. But after I get done with my announcements, you've got announcements to make, specifically with regard to recovering from religion and everything. Briefly, announcements here on the line. First of all, tomorrow's Transatlantic Call-In Show with Katy and Aron again for the third week in a row. If you have questions about trans rights issues, if you are worried because you've been accused of being transphobic, or if you're proud of it, you can call in and talk to them and challenge them on their views or similar things. There was actually a gentleman on Facebook who made a bunch of misinformed claims in a comment that was posted on a friend of mine's post, and then snarkily acknowledged that they would be viewed as transphobic for saying those things. And I was pointing out to them that, yes, in fact, you're spreading misinformation about the percentage of people who regret transitioning, etc. And this is the sort of thing that gets debunked all the time. That person and others could just call in the Transatlantic Call-In Show. On Sunday, Jimmy and I will be doing the Sunday show together. Yay. Monday, Skeptalk will be Forrest Valkai and Aron Ra. And so you get like the double dose of biology and snakes. Tuesday's Chewed Gum will be Alyssa Lube with Erica Gutsick Gibbon, which I can't wait to see that. I've been loving the new show and, doing what we can to get the word out there so that I love the fact that the numbers are going to be a little soft on the hang up today. I suspect because when I went to the YouTube front page, every week when I sit down on Wednesday, I open up YouTube and the top 2 rows of suggestions include the things that I'm subscribed to and what's coming up. And normally the one in the top corner is the hang up because it's saying, hey, you're 30 minutes from going live here. Let's start telling people about it. Today, there were 3 other Line Network shows in my top suggestion, and I had to go look and hunt for a link to the hang up. So either I got, kind of stealth hidden on the down low there, or YouTube's changing up their algorithm, or I just like our other shows so much that YouTube's putting them in front of mine, which is perfectly fine. Next week's hang up guest will be Nick Fish to talk about the American Atheist Convention. And a huge thank you to all of our moderators and to today's screener, the apostate Paul. Darrel, what's going on with RFR and stuff?
Well, we're going to be at the American Atheist Convention tabling. We're actually going to have 8, count them, 8 volunteers. That will include Gail and I. They're tabling and talking with people about recovering from religion. But we got a big fundraiser coming up in March 4th. May the 4th be with you. We will be having a fundraiser, and Jimmy Snow is organizing it. And you have been a major player in our fundraiser in the last couple of years, so we really appreciate that. We're going to have a big lineup. I think Jimmy's lining up a whole bunch of people. And last year we not only hit our goal, but we knocked the top out of our goal, which is cool. As a result, we were able to accomplish some major goals last year. One of those goals was to have a billboard, and we experimented with a billboard last year. Anytime you do something for the first time, you don't know what you're doing. We tried to do whatever we knew we could do, and it turned out to be reasonably successful. But we think we've got a new angle, and we're going to do it again. We think it's really worth it, and we got the right price and the right place. We are going to put a billboard up, 2 billboards, right next to a church that has had a major scandal, and we're going to be talking about, has your church hurt you? Call Recover from Religion. It'll be kind of almost that simple with some really, really good graphics. We think it's important to get people start connecting church harm and that there's help out there, because we have a lot of people come to us saying, I didn't know you guys existed. I wish you had known when I left the church, because it was such a painful. And this person you just read their email, if they just call us, we could help them, or we could help them find people that could help them. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is we're starting a new initiative. I'll have more about it at a later date probably, but have you ever noticed that whenever you go to a hospital, the chaplains want to bug you and the nurses are wearing crosses and there's crucifixes in your room and all that kind of bullshit around religion?
Yeah.
Well, we've got a whole task force. We're starting to look at that and try asking the question, what are your rights? And if you look, I don't know if you saw it, Matt, but the Secular Coalition and I can't remember they just got new rules passed under the Biden administration that says you have a right to know and not to be proselytized to if that healthcare organization is accepting federal funds. We've been lobbying for that for 10 years, and they finally agreed to it under the Biden administration. So we're here to try and jump on that bandwagon, so to speak, because when I went to a damn hospital, there was no place for me to say I'm an atheist. I could say not religious, but I couldn't say atheist. And then, so the next hospital I was in, I put atheist down, and that the chaplain knew damn good and well I put on there atheist, but he kept bugging me, and I was not feeling good. So I had an attitude, Matt, that you might be proud of. Get the hell out of my room. anyway, those are some of the things we're doing right now, and it's pretty exciting. We're looking forward to the fundraiser. One last thing. We have on the 1st of May or so, we will be announcing, well, of course, I'm kind of announcing it now, that we have full nonprofit status in Australia. And we will have our RFR with its own board of directors in Australia. We are so thrilled with that. As you know, last year I did a full tour of Australia with our on the ground recovered from religion volunteers, and we really raised a lot of awareness and got a lot of people excited. Well, that's all come to fruition now. So we've now got a full board of directors. We've got a set of bylaws, and we'll soon be, we think by May 1st, we paid all the fees. So we should have full nonprofit status. And we'll start being able to do things like fundraising and putting on RFR legally, I don't know what you call it, programs that are valid under their nonprofit status. Nonprofit's kind of different in Australia than it is here. So we've had a little bit of a learning curve there. So thanks for letting me throw that all in there, Matt.
No worries. I've got, oh boy. I've got a call. We'll take this call here. Max is calling from India. Max, pronouns are he, him, is saying there is no God. So welcome, Max. How did you want to demonstrate that?
Hi. Yeah. Hi. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good.
All right. So, usually my big concern is that if there's a God, there shouldn't be any evil. But when I say this to a religious person, they say, murder is evil and God gave us free will. Okay. So the next question comes, why are there earthquakes and why are people dying in it? Because free will has nothing to do with this faulty planet that was created by God. My point is, if there was a God, either he shouldn't have built earthquakes, but if there was a reason to build it, now he should fix it. Like now he should fix this. So this is my biggest argument against existence of God.
What if there's a God that doesn't want to do that?
So that makes that God evil because he's killing us and we shouldn't worship him.
Okay. What if there's an evil God? That doesn't mean there's not a God. There's just an evil God.
Okay. Then okay. So first of all, if there is, then we shouldn't worship him. But again, if there's an evil God, then God believers should be able to provide evidence. It's like if I right now say that I saw a flying horse outside my home and you won't believe. So you're not in the wrong in not believing in me. It's my claim. I should back it up with evidence. So if someone says that the God is evil, okay.
But let's say somebody makes a claim.
Yeah.
Somebody makes a claim, any claim, doesn't matter. And they don't defend that claim and prove that it's true. Does their inability or unwillingness to prove the claim is true, does that mean you're justified in believing the claim is false?
Not really. Not in all cases.
Yeah, correct. Don't get me wrong, Max. I'm with you. My best argument against the existence of God is the argument from divine hiddenness and the fact that the world doesn't appear to be the way it would be if there was a God. But asserting that there isn't a God comes with a burden of proof. And if your only proof is, well, they haven't proved it, then instead of saying, hey, there is no God, it's nobody's proved there's a God. Now you've got a claim that's actually defensible. We're all on the same page.
Yep. But can you repeat this? I didn't totally get your point. Can you repeat that?
So you and I are in agreement that we don't have any good reason to believe there's a God. The bigger difference is that by and large, I don't feel the need to run around saying there is no God. Instead, I'm happy to do that and defend it in certain circumstances. And I would use something like the argument from divine hiddenness. But why adopt a burden of proof by saying there is no God when they already have a burden of proof, shouldn't we just say, you guys still haven't met your burden of proof? You guys keep coming to me talking about God. As soon as you prove it, I'll believe it. Until then, you're just wasting my time.
That makes sense. I mean, that makes me agnostic, right? That would make sense.
No, you're an atheist. Agnostic is not, there's not a middle ground. You are either someone who is convinced that a God exists, and if so, you are a theist. And if you're not convinced that a God exists, you're an atheist. And so you and I aren't convinced.
There are some people who don't know. No, but there are some people who don't know whether there is a God or not a God. So we call them agnostic.
I don't know if there's a God or not. I don't know if there's a God or not, but I also don't believe there's a God. Atheism and agnosticism aren't two different things. Knowledge is a subset of belief, and therefore agnosticism could be a subset of theism or strong atheism.
All right. So can I ask what made you lose belief in religion and God? Like you must be religious at some point, and then you would have changed, right? Right. I wanna know your story. Like
Yes.
what made you believe that?
You can Google my story. I've told it about 500 times on 500 different podcasts, but at the end of the day, I was going to be a preacher, and I found out I didn't have good reasons for my beliefs.
Good for you for standing up for your beliefs. You know what? I go to other religious channels like Islam and Christian channels and go on live debates asking them why there is a God. There's usually two outcomes of that call. Either they throw me out of the call, or they start making fun of me or maybe abusing me. They start calling me stupid. They start calling me uneducated, maybe a fool. Like if I don't agree with their false assumption, either I'm out of the call or like I'm stupid. That's how they behave with me usually.
It's unfortunate, but I don't know if there's anything that can be done.
Yeah, I
Hey,
know.
Max.
That's crazy, right? All right.
Darrel has a question
I
for
appreciate
you.
you calling in. I just want to say thank you for calling in. But we know that there's a number of pretty active atheist and secular groups in India. I was just wondering if you belong to any of them.
No, I don't belong to. I just recently started calling into YouTube live debates, like maybe a month ago. So I'm an atheist for about 15 years. One of my friend tried to convince me that there's a God, and that started this whole bug of talking to religious people. Like, why do they believe? I don't think anything would convince me that there's a God, except if God comes down from the heavens or the clouds and shows us a miracle, like create life in front of my eye. Until I get that proof, I don't think I'm gonna change. So I don't belong to any atheist group. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
All right. So
I would ask.
I don't have any other questions. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll let it go at that then. Thanks for the call, Max. I will point out to everybody else, I've addressed this a number of different times, that the sort of answers people give when they say, oh, here's what would convince me that a God exists. The sort of answers people give are often not remotely good enough. Like, let's say someone showed up and appeared to create life in front of you. How would you know that is in fact what they'd done, and that this can only be done by a God, therefore you should believe that they're God? It doesn't make sense to me. It would be as arrogant. This is why the answer that I've given for years is that I don't know what would convince me. But if a God exists, that God should know what would convince me and hasn't done it. Because somebody's like, oh, well, they could create life right in front of me. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know how I could tell the difference between someone creating life right in front of me and someone pretending to create life right in front of me. As Arthur C. Clarke famously pointed out, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and yet people are constantly seem to have this arrogant view that they can tell the difference between magic and some advanced technology. I can't, so I give a different answer.
I was going to say Arthur C. Clarke's quote was right on target there.
Yeah, I wish that there was something in the way of saying, "Oh, okay, here's the sort of thing that could, would, or should convince me or anybody else." But I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how to tell. And so instead, I just say, you know what? I don't know. It's the humility of, I wish I had a better answer, but the whole notion of me having a better answer is already a big flaw.
I've seen you do magic shows, and you could almost convince me you're a god sometimes, as good as you are at it.
I appreciate that. I'm not. And I don't have any interest in trying to convince anybody that I'm a guy. But yeah, if you took me back in time, I could absolutely convince, well, maybe not, or to someplace, you could do the sorts of miraculous things and people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's one of the reasons why magicians, being kind of the experts to some extent on how some people fool themselves and are fooled by things, it's what makes them valuable in looking for trickery in claims that need to be investigated by in the right line of skepticism. But anyway, enough of that. We have a theist caller here who is evidently going to present some kind of argument from complexity. But Liam in New Zealand, you're on the air with Dr. Darrel, Ray, and Matt.
Hello there.
Hi.
Look, I think there is a God.
And I think you're the fake caller that dropped the N-word a couple weeks ago, calling in, lying, because I can see your IP address, you idiot, that I told you about, and can see that you're not calling from New Zealand, but you are, in fact, once again, calling from Queensland, Australia. Liam, I'm 10 buckets smarter than you and always will be. No matter what name you put on, no matter what you try to do to get on, to say you're garbage, I'm going to catch you every single time, because even if I miss it initially, we'll catch you at some point, delete your call from the show, and continue posting without it. So thanks for the new IP address. I'll ban that one too. All right.
We get the same problem occasionally.
It happens. We have a caller. Is it Bernest?
Yes, it is.
It says we've talked before, and yet the name's not clicking with me. But
No,
cool.
no. It was during the mishap. Basically, as soon as I was in the queue, it seemed like all communications dropped, like the show stopped in its tracks.
Cool. Well, here you are. You had a question about
I was
Mary
a little
the Color
worried that I
Theorist.
had something to do with that.
No. For those who don't know, in the philosophical study of qualia is a nearly, I don't know, magical property that is sometimes ascribed to things, kind of sort of giving them an essence or something that requires an experiential sort of experience-based epistemology to justify knowledge about it. And so Mary the Color Theorist is this idea that you have a neuroscientist named Mary who is forced to study the world in a black and white room where they can only see black and white. But Mary knows everything there is to know about color from her studies. And so one of the versions is if Mary were to open the door and see a red flower or a red something outside the door, and this would be the first time that Mary's actually experienced color, does she learn anything new about red? Is that Fair enough, Bernice?
It's actually interesting because a part of the reason why I called is, so the short answer is no, but it's not your fault. It's likely my fault. I actually was curious to see what the difference in how we're using the term might be. I've never heard of qualia used in a supernatural context. I always just heard of it described as basically being subjective experience. The example being, how do I know for sure that a strawberry looks to you the way it looks to me? As in, we
That's
may
a
both
completely
agree
different
that
issue.
the color it is.
Now
Understood.
that
Understood.
whether or not your red and my red are the same is completely different from Mary the color theorist experiment with qualia.
I see. So I don't know if you can see, but my proposed sort of response, I'm sort of to understand that this is just a thought experiment, so sort of like a koan from a Buddhist master or something like that. And I tend to take those things maybe too seriously, like the idea of the sound of one hand clapping. I just sort of flick my fingers very hard into my palm, and that's one hand clapping
now
right
we're
there.
up to,
but
now we're up to three different things. So qualia has nothing
right,
to do.
So I'm reeling back. I'm sorry.
Hang on. Qualia has nothing to do with whether or not your red is my red. That just has to do with color perception. When I see a strawberry and I say it's red, and you look at a strawberry and say, yes, that's red. The issue is, if I were to see what you're seeing, would I also call it red? It may appear blue to you, but you're calling blue red and calling red. That has to do with color perception. That is not qualia. So if you have something to do with qualia
Understood.
and Mary the color theorist, go for it. Because
I guess not, because my main response would just be that she would learn whether or not she is colorblind. But from what I'm hearing, that's more perceptive. It's subjective, but it's not supernatural, which is where I'm getting kind of tripped.
Well, I didn't use the term supernatural.
I've always heard it.
I did say magic, and it's because I don't think qualia exists. I have no reason to think that qualia exists. And so as a property of something. So what some people would say is, when Mary opens the door.
I agree. I'm not an essentialist. Yeah, I agree.
So here's the original Mary the color theorist, as phrased by Frank Jackson in 1982. Mary is a brilliant scientist who, for whatever reason, is forced to investigate the world from black and white room via a black and white television monitor. She specializes in neurophysiology of vision and acquires, let us suppose, all the physical information there is to obtain about what goes on when we see ripe tomatoes or the sky, and use terms like red and blue and so on. She discovers, for example, just which wavelength combinations from the sky stimulate the retina, and exactly how this produces via the central nervous system the contraction of the vocal cords and the expulsion of air from the lungs that result in the uttering of the sentence, "The sky is blue." What will happen when Mary is released from her black and white room and is given a color television monitor? Will she learn anything or not? It seems just obvious that she will learn something about the world and our visual experience of it, but then it is inescapable that her previous knowledge was incomplete. But she had all the physical information. Ergo, there is more to have than that, and this is a proof that physicalism is false. The problem that I have with this thought experiment is that if you define it that she knows everything, if you define it that she knows everything, then clearly she doesn't learn anything new. But if she does learn something new, what she would learn is about what it's directly like for her to experience something. She may know the mechanics of what happens, but she will not have had an experience. And so what she's learning about is not qualia in the sense of, here's a feature of red or a feature of blue or even a feature of vision, but how she processes information, because this is information she hasn't processed before. That would be the most she could possibly learn from it, is my assessment of the problem.
Okay. So, right. I guess, it comes down to, like you said, your idea of qualia, or the idea of qualia. Like I said, I just need to go and read more perspectives on qualia, but it does seem like this physicalism. I didn't know that was the razor. I didn't know that was the line that experiment was meaning to draw. But I was thinking that there's obviously social connotations and implications that are learned that I thought maybe were included in the original thought experiment, like red is associated with passion, that sort of thing. But no, it's weird. That physicalism. I would think that's okay. I see. All right. Thank you. I've been watching Atheist Experience and that sort of thing since 2012. Yeah, long-time fan,
Cool.
first-time caller. I appreciate it.
Awesome. I would recommend you and anybody else who has curiosity about philosophical topics, including qualia and physicalism and knowledge, just go to plato.stanford.edu. That is the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and there are really thorough, detailed breakdowns of things like qualia. That's where I went when I wanted to make sure I read Frank Jackson's original formulation. There are others there as well. If you follow up in section 3 there, it goes to Horgan's look from 84. And then there's great discussions about, what are the alternate ways to deal with this issue? How can we, what does it show us? Are we correct? And I don't think, I'm not necessarily advocating for physicalism in the sense that the material world is all that exists. I'm happy to accept that there's something beyond the physical world just as soon as there's a demonstration of it. But if you have this highly constructed scenario where somebody's only ever experienced black and white, but they've studied everything that happens when you experience color, then what they learn when they experience color isn't any of that factual information, but instead what it feels like to them specifically to experience it. And one of the cool things about this is that imagine you'd been alive for 30 years and you'd never seen any color. And then somebody walks you out, takes off your blindfold, and you're standing in a field of wildflowers at sunset. That experience isn't about the color itself. There's not something about the color that's necessarily the contributor to that experience. This is not an experience you've actually had before. What if every night you walked out and saw that same sunset with the same wildflowers? Would your experience the 50,000th time seeing that be the same as your experience the first time seeing that? And it's that look at qualia is one of the ways that I kind of got over the idea that there might be something there, because it seems to me rather obvious that the 50,000th time is not going to be as impressive as the first time. And so people look at that and say, yes, and that's what proves the point, because clearly there was something about that first experience that the person didn't know. And on the 50,000th time, they do know it. And all that really is
bias, right?
What's it like for me to see this for the first time? What is that experience like? And it's not like a feature of the physical light or anything.
And you get people misunderstanding like the observer effect or what have you, the double slit experiment.
Oh, now we're into territory number 4, so I'm going to call it quits right there.
No. We don't have to cover this. I'm just saying that this seems similar to that kind of those ideas that come out of that kind of thinking.
All right.
Yeah, it can't stand in the same river twice. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Burns. Everything's got to be a Buddhist koan at some point. Darrel, did you ever spend any time dabbling in Buddhism, Eastern thought, any of those things?
I did dabble. I had some instructors that were experimenting with that at one point in time because of things like mindfulness. You got to remember my age. I'm old enough to remember when that stuff was right on the cutting edge. Yeah, I did. But I never bought into, Buddhism is just another religion in many ways. It's got its own supernatural issues. But it did have some essential qualities that allowed for us to discover the therapeutic value of some practices like breathing exercises or mindfulness exercises. And for that, I'm happy to have known a bit about it. I actually taught
It,
transcendental meditation for a while too. That was before I became a psychologist, and I
yeah.
value that some of the discipline of that. Why it works is not why they say it works, though.
Yeah. It's when I look at when new claims come out, and for example, new methods in psychiatry, psychology, and medicine, when something new comes out, we are right to be dubious and on guard, and we should be exercising skepticism and demanding that um, whatever the proposed treatment or process is, um, should be rigorously tested before we just, I mean, but you also do have to do a risk analysis. If the issue here is like, we want to teach people to meditate, well, okay, I can't, or at least if somebody's really, really good at it and thinks they can teach me, bring it on. I've been down this path before. For whatever reason, it's apparently not for me. And so I think maybe this is a great example. I fully believe that there are people who can meditate and benefit from it because that's what the data show. They don't necessarily show that you transcend the physical or that you can actually make your mind empty and destroy the self and the ego. I mean, none of that flowers, but the actual benefits of what they're actually doing, you can see some of that. And so as a skeptic, I don't have to experience that directly to say, I'm convinced this is real. All I need is the data for that. And so if there were a God and somebody were able to demonstrate that, praying to this particular God had X results, then there would be data. And I would believe that praying to this God had X results. Even if that God doesn't exist, it could be the case that, maybe some magical utterance is like a butterfly flapping its wings and it happens just at the right frequency and it does this and it changes the world and it goes out. I'll believe anything for which there's actual evidence for it. We just got to be kind of rigorous about testing it. And what seems to happen quite often is that purveyors of woo don't want to do that testing.
It's intellectual laziness, is what it amounts to. And I'm sorry to say, in the world of psychology, we have a lot of people who are intellectually lazy. They don't want to go through the rigors of testing new theories. And I'll tell you, since I got in graduate school, there's been a new theory a year, maybe a new theory a month, and almost none of them have proven valid using any kind of rigorous testing methodology. So
Well,
that's one of my
yeah.
pet peeves in therapy.
Hey,
There are
it's one of
good
those things.
therapy methodologies.
Yeah. I remember, when people started talking about mindfulness, it's exactly the type of word that you would expect to come out of some woo-woo bullshit factory. And when you get down to what we're actually talking about with mindfulness, there's no woo there, and there's nothing there to even go, oh, well, yeah, I don't know why I was worried about that. I really wish we would kind of be better about labeling things in a way that demonstrates whatever scientific rigor was put into developing a model or a way to do things. We're going to take some more calls here. We got people queuing up right now. Before we do, I know I've already done one set of announcements. I have another set of announcements. And the first one is that, as is always the case, the super chats that come in that are over $10, we'll be reading all of them at the end of the show. We'll go through them. We'll keep doing it as long as we got there. I've already seen some of them come in. One of them actually asked a question about Dan Dennett, which I can't look. I'll wait and answer it later, but I appreciate that. So yeah, once we're done with calls, we'll get on to all the super chats over $10 as well. But for those of you who are watching, you can also support the Line Network by clicking like and subscribe and ringing the bell. You can also support Recovering from Religion by going to recoveringfromreligion.org. And more stuff from the Line, you can go to qnaline.com/theline debates to apply to be on NBoss, one of our several new debate shows. And you can get all of your merchandise at linemerch.com. And there should be hoodies and shirts up right now because this is my birthday month and Jimmy's birthday month. And so each of us have our own designs. Jimmy has some, I don't know, design there with text about daddy or something. Oh yeah, there it is on the screen. It's a really cool little logo. But don't tell him I said it. Unafraid to disappoint daddy, magical or otherwise. That's Jimmy. You can get it on t-shirts, mugs, and hoodies and things like that. But the NBoss logo of a version, I think, of me that is clearly horny. No, has horns, not is horny. I'm sorry, I read the copy wrong. That one's there, and that's the one that should win. Like, you should absolutely go get your t-shirts and mugs and hoodies and stickers and whatever else with that logo, and not the one unafraid to disappoint daddy, magical or otherwise. It's good stuff.
My question is, are you trying to look like Daniel Dennett?
All right, whether it's Dan Dennett or James Randi or whatever, I'm trying to look the way Arden wanted me to look. And so when she said, hey, go ahead, you should grow your beard out, I think I'd like it. I did, and I like it too, and so does almost everybody else. But one person in chat already told me to shave, so I timed them out for 30 minutes because if I can't have fun on my own fucking show, what's the point? All right. We have a Theist caller, but and Theists will get priority, but I was already setting this one live. This is Pip from the UK, pronouns are they, them. Pip says, debating the willfully ignorant is a pointless task. At what point do we say enough is enough? So Pip, I guess the question then is, how do you tell if they're willfully ignorant or just ignorant?
I think it depends on who the person is, because when I think of someone who is willfully ignorant, I'm thinking of people who make it their job to spread this misinformation. I'm thinking people like Kent Hovind, Ray Comfort, and even people like Jordan Peterson, who you had the debates with, who just repeat the same old nonsense over and over, and just have freely admitted, especially in the case of like Ken Ham, that even if they had like 100% concrete, irrefutable proof that Jesus did not rise from the dead, or that their God does not exist, that they believe it anyway. And so I've just been watching a lot of atheist content for the better part of my adult life, which is like over 10, maybe 15 years at this point. And I just see so much repetition, and I just have to wonder, why do we even bother with it now when we've already said so much of this, to put it completely bluntly, this bollocks so many times over?
Well, I can tell you why I do what I do. Number one is, imagine 10 people, and 3 of them are never, ever, they're all religious. 3 of them are never going to change their mind. I have no way of telling the difference between those 3 people and the other 7 most of the time. But also, if I engage with all 10 of them the same, and I do it publicly so that all 10 of them can see me engage, if I'm engaging with one of the people who's never going to change their mind, whether I know it or not, everybody else who might change their mind gets to benefit from watching that happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's understandable. And I really commend you for your patience and your commitment to reaching out to those who in the audience who might be intellectually honest. While I was never raised to be religious myself, I've always been raised to be curious and love science. And so when I listen to a lot of these debates, and especially with people like Forrest Valkai, I'm watching these videos to learn more about science, because science is amazing, and I love learning more about the natural world. And while there are almost certainly a lot of people who have a very specific bias due to the way they are raised, everyone has a bias to one extent or another, and some people may not have ever had the necessity or even the desire to think about it before. But I also, just tend to think that at some point we've repeated ourselves so much that you may as well just have a soundboard with all the common rebuttals to all the common points, so that, we don't have to waste our breath repeating the same thing.
Pip, may
Are
I?
you
May I
suggesting?
throw my 2 cents in?
Yeah, let me ask this
I
one
am
question
Sorry, say
first.
again?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Let me ask this one question. Pip, do you think I can be replaced by a soundboard?
Depends on the situation. For a show like
Okay.
this, I
I'm
do
gonna.
not think
You,
so.
you can stop
But
there. You
if
can
we're-
stop there.
Sorry.
Darrel wants to jump in. I just wanted that
Right.
question answered. Go ahead, Darrel.
Okay,
Yeah, well,
sure,
let
go
me
ahead.
just say, I've known Matt for at least 15 years. He's been doing this show or other kinds of shows for 15 years. Do you realize in those 15 years, next month is Recover from Religion's 15th birthday, by the way, Matt? You may not have known that.
Hey,
But in those 15 years, you will not believe how many hundreds, maybe thousands of people have chatted in or called in to Recover from Religion. And the first thing they say, or one of the first things they say is, I just heard about you guys on the Atheist Experience or on the Hang Up. And they're calling us for help. If Matt wasn't there doing what he's doing right now, what we're doing right now, literally, they would have never known who to call or where to call. So what I'm saying is I have evidence that what Matt just said is actually what is happening. And thank the Flying Spaghetti Monster for people like Matt. And there is other people doing it too. I'm not denigrating Matt. And
no.
you can stand out and argue all you want, but that's not what we're doing here. You're arguing one-on-one with somebody and you're frustrated about it. That's not what we're doing. We're helping educate people and giving them an opportunity to hear other sides and showing them some resources that they can take advantage
Plus, we
of.
see people changing their mind. We
Oh,
genuinely
yeah.
see people changing their mind, and sometimes it's people you might not expect. And so, as long as I keep getting messages from people who have changed their mind and benefited, even like the one I read out at the beginning of the show, this is somebody who left Mormonism 8 years ago. In part, I don't take credit for anybody leaving their religion. I just talk, but it was in part due to things that I'd said, and in part doing people that I'd worked with. And so this person is really suffering. This person is having a really hard time and is wondering, was it all worth it? And I have confidence that in the long run, I think they'll think it was worth it. That the problematic parts will pass. But as long as people are telling me that things I've done change their mind, including people who I've been surprised by, people who like the most shocking thing that I think could ever happen would be for my mom and dad to call me up and say, hey, we've secretly been listening to you for the last 10 years and you've convinced us. Like, I think there's a better chance of me flapping my arms and flying to the moon than to ever have that happen. And yet I've met people who felt the same way about their loved ones or people they knew. And those people end up changing their mind. So while I have no hope of that happening for my parents, I don't know that for anybody else. So that's why I do what I do. But if you just, I get your frustration, and Darrel's right to point out, Pip, that, if you're not enjoying the one-on-one conversations, if you're not getting anything out of it, if you want to watch Forrest to learn science, cool. I watch Forrest to learn science. I don't watch any atheist content to learn anything about atheism for the most part. I learn it to see what arguments happen when I'm not around, how other people deal with certain things, and to get good information on, like, when I watch Apologia, I'm there because Paul's thoughts are brilliant, and I don't spend a lot of time watching it because I don't ever want to just be a copy of Paul. But if Paul says something that makes me think, I'll spend days processing it, coming up with different versions, trying to figure out all the different avenues of attack. And if I find a terrible weakness, I'll message Paul. It's never happened, I don't think, but if I found a terrible weakness, I would message Paul and let him know, because I don't want Paul to be out there with a weak ass argument and get demolished somewhere. And if it's really strong, where it becomes something that I would use, then I'm going to use it. And maybe one of those people that you've run across, Pip, who you would say are willfully ignorant, maybe something that Paul said in combination with something that I said, in combination with something that you said, in combination with what they've been thinking about and struggling about, may lead to even that willfully ignorant person changing some aspect of it, which may change later down the line. And that's why we keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand what you're saying there, and I just want to emphasize that I absolutely commend you for your patience, especially with someone like, Jordan Peterson, who I've just heard so much about and heard so much repetition. I just sometimes just want to tear my hair out, saying I've heard this bullshit before. Sorry?
Yeah. I said, that's how I got here, tearing my hair out.
Yeah, I suppose you could say so. But yeah, I think I'm perhaps thinking like on a broader scale. But then again, I suppose you could say that when someone has been preaching this misinformation for so long, it can become bloody exhausting to fight it. But to the same extent, it's a necessary fight. It's something that we have to do because there are people being lied to. And while I do sometimes lose a bit of, I hate using the word faith, but it's in a different context. I suppose I lose faith in, that this actually helps anybody, not necessarily, these live discussions where people are coming to us to talk about and debate their ideas, but rather going to them. Because I think you and I both know how many times, Kent Hovind has challenged some atheists to a debate over creationism. And I have no idea how many have accepted those, but I suppose there's just so much dishonesty. I wonder if there's we have to focus less on the arguments themselves and more about the logical fallacies and inconsistencies that give someone the tools of how to think, as opposed to, just explaining, what to think. Though I don't want to imply that you're, trying to push any sort of dogma at all.
Yeah.
Yes, well, it's been a very enlightening conversation. Oh, God.
Yep. Thanks, Pip. I appreciate the call. I've got a theist caller. We're going to see how this theist call goes. So thank you, Pip, for those thoughts.
No worries. Yeah. I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much for this conversation. Bye for now.
Cheers, mate.
Good night.
Oh my gosh, where did the theist go? Well, there was a theist on the line, and I was just getting ready to take that call, in part because this theist had questions about dealing with the Bible, and they were struggling with it. We do have another call, this one specifically for you. So Mary in Florida, welcome back. Mary's one of our wonderful regular questioners who has questions for you, Dr. Ray.
All right. Hey, Mary.
Hi, Matt. I told the screener that I have a master's degree in education and a lot of psychology courses, and I'm interested in the volunteer system that RFR uses. That do people, if one volunteers to help, listen to others and refer them to other sources. I know you have a training program, but how long does the training program take? And is it a 24/7 thing where you have to be available, or the process in that? If you could explain that to me, I would love to assist in helping people that are struggling with problems. I'm a very compassionate
Once
person.
once you volunteer for Recovery from Religion, we tie a chain around your leg and we force you to answer phones 24 hours a day. So that's
Okay,
I'm just literally actually no. What we've got a very rigorous and well developed training program. It's about 4 hours of self-paced training, if you will. You watch some videos, you read some material, and you know that sort of thing. And then once you're through,
right.
well, first you hit the volunteer button. And the second thing that happens is they schedule an interview. You have to pass the interview. We have people that actually interview. That's their main job: interview new volunteers. And if you get through the interview, then you do about 4 hours of self-paced training, and you'll have some contact people if you got questions or need any help. And then once you're through the 4 hours, if you make it through, because some people don't finish the 4 hours, so they don't get any farther. Once you get through those 4 hours, then
Yeah.
you get about another 4 hours of one-on-one training with a trainer, and they teach you all the things depending on where you're volunteering. If you're volunteering for the phone lines or for the chat line or for a support group, or if you're volunteer for something else, maybe you want to volunteer to be an IT person. We've got lots of different things to volunteer for, but we try to figure out which thing you want to volunteer for or what fits best with you, and then we match you to that training. And then once you're finished with the training, a total about 8 hours, then we put you into a line to start actually doing the work with kind of with a coach. You'll always have a coach. You always have some, we call them helpline hero supporters. They're always there to help you if you got questions. And then we ask that you only give us about 4 hours a month. We don't keep track of that. We're not here to we're not here to look at all how many minutes you spend online, but we do ask that you try and put in 4 hours a month to keep your skills up and be sure you're staying up with any of the latest issues that we're finding. That answer your question, Mary, or if you got more questions?
Yeah. 4 hours a month. I'm retired, so I have a lot of time on my hands, and could certainly give more than 4 hours.
Let me warn you, some of our volunteers say it's a trap because when they get in here, they don't volunteer 4 hours. We've had volunteers that are volunteering 20 hours a month. It's going to be very rewarding, and sometimes we have to say, wait a minute, don't volunteer quite as much because we don't want you burning out. But by and large, it's a very rewarding thing. So if you want to volunteer more than 4 hours, go for it. We've had people that are happy to spend a lot more than that volunteering.
If you,
Okay,
Mary,
and
or anybody else, if you or anybody else were moved by the email that I read at the beginning of the show and have an interest in helping out people who are in positions like that, that's 100% why I point people to RFR. And I think I can't think of too many people I've talked to as regular callers who I'd be more interested in seeing involved if it's something you're interested in. But I need to put out the call for all the people who are in chat who are like, oh, well, now I've just heard what it takes to volunteer and I'm out to have some time and there's some people in need. Yes. I don't think Darrel has recovering from religion ever had too many volunteers? See,
we're working hard.
There you go.
I'll tell you that we have this is a cool, I think a really cool statistic. We have over 400 volunteers and they cover about 20 time zones. We literally have volunteers from Moscow to Estonia to United Kingdom to Syria to Argentina to Perth, Australia. They're all around the globe. And so that's why we can offer 24-hour response time, because we got people in almost all time zones. But we always need more. Absolutely always need more. Thanks for asking that, Matt.
And that would be rfr.org.
Recoveringfromreligion.org.
More information. Okay.
Yeah, recoveringfromreligion.org, and hit the volunteer button. and it'll take you through. You have to read our terms and conditions, so to speak, because we want you to know what you're signing up for. But you pretty much got the big picture from what I just told you. And once you get in there, you're going to find there's some of the most amazing, caring people you'll ever meet. Are RFR volunteers.
Yes,
Tell them Darrel sent you.
Oh, that will help get me in the door, huh?
No, it won't be. It will help you a bit. you tell him you heard about us through the hang up or on the line rather.
Yeah, tell him Matt sent you, and then Darrel will have to come back and say, "We got another one from Matt. I don't even know how it happened. I was right there, and we still got it from Matt."
I'm just a very compassionate person, and you know, I've fortunately Matt has introduced me to Brandon on Mind Shift, and I've been watching a lot of his stuff, and he's amazing. And just helping people with the guilt and trauma inflicted and losing the family and community. It breaks my heart that can, break up people and make them feel so lonely and so I will definitely go on and check on that. Also, if I may say, Matt.
Thank you.
And then, Matt, I'll let you go. But I called a couple weeks ago, I think, about the misogyny in the Bible. And
you emailed.
Yes, I did. But I get you're busy with snakes and rats and Arden. Oh, my.
Yes.
And
snakes and rats and Arden, oh, my.
But Mind Shift covered a little bit of the misogyny in it, but I'm really wanting to go, a lot more in depth with, and I see people in chat and they go, Google it, Mary. And I'm like, okay, I could certainly read the passage from the Bible, but I'm wanting to know a little more detail on the info that just Googling the passage doesn't tell me a lot, or the meaning behind chopping up your concubine and mailing the 12 parts all over, whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've got the email, and the plan is to actually do a video on it. I don't know how quickly I'm going to be able to get to it, and it might actually be a video in a couple of months, in part because I've got a debate I'm prepping for at the end of this month, and in addition to that, I've got my other videos that I'm trying to get done as we move towards it, and I have a really long list of videos, and this one isn't going to make the cut in short order.
Oh, I know that, hon. All right. Well, I'll let you go. Hopefully there's more Theus callers and maybe they need some guidance with Dr. Ray there.
We'll see.
But
we will see.
Thank you so much. I will go.
Thank you, Mary.
Check the site and check on volunteering, because I like to help people, and I'm not going to get political, but just the white Christian nationalist stuff is very scary for me and what's going on. So I won't go off on a tangent. Thank you. I will click the volunteer button and check it out and keep watching. Thank you, Matt and Dr. Ray.
Thank you so much. And while, so we had Mary to the show because the Theus caller that I'd been waiting for hung up. Then while we were talking to Mary, that same Theus caller called back, and I was just getting ready to click to put them up next when they hung up yet again or disconnected. I don't know what's going on. But we do have a theist caller. So, Larry in Ecuador,
Yes,
thanks for waiting and calling in. You're on the line on the hang up.
Okay, Matt, Darrel, thank you, gentlemen, for your time. I think this will really be a great show if I can just get 10 minutes of your guys' time. And Matt, I have some acceptable answers for some of the questions I've seen you ask about God in previous videos.
So if you
I
need
can
10
answer
minutes,
some of your questions.
if
Yes,
you
sir.
need 10 minutes, then you should apply to be on InBoss, because you get 10 minutes uninterrupted at the beginning of InBoss. Really good opportunity to just go to qnaline.com/theline-debates and apply to be on InBoss. And then if you're selected, you get 10 minutes right off the bat. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you 10 minutes on this show, because that's not what we
Okay.
do. I am
Sure.
willing to actually engage with you a little bit. But if you absolutely need 10 minutes,
Please.
but it says here, you have a way to communicate with God. Does your way to communicate with God have God actually communicating back? Because I can talk to God and ghosts. I just can't get them to talk back.
It's a communication with frequencies that give me a sense of knowledge. So through these frequencies, I can get an understanding of what this is trying to teach me, or an understanding of what the message is about.
Yeah. None of that made any sense to me. When I communicate, like when Darrel and I communicate,
Yes, sir.
there's nothing about frequencies. I just talk to Darrel and Darrel talks to me. Can God do that?
Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
not
How
through
does
voice, but it is through vibrational states, and it's like a vibrational emotional states. Yeah,
vibrational
and visions,
emotional
as well
states?
as visions.
Hang on. Just ask the questions that I'm answer the questions I'm asking. So when Darrel talks
Yes,
to me, there are ways that I can confirm that it's Darrel. If you're getting communications from God through vibrations, how can you confirm it's God?
So there is a specific vibrational state that you can get into where you know that it is.
How do you know that?
There's several times that I've been able to astral plane. There's been 3 different occasions. I learned how to be able to do it. But on those 3 occasions that I was
That's
able
not
to
an
do
answer.
it, I was shown.
That's
Well, I'm
not.
trying
I'm
to
asking
explain to
you. No. You're babbling on about stuff that's never been
I'm not
demonstrated.
that.
And I asked how you know it's God, and you
is.
said there's several.
I can
Are you
prove
going to
it to
keep
you.
trying to talk over me? Because that's never going to fucking work for you, and you should know that by now.
No, sir. I'm trying to add to it. I'm not trying to talk over you. I'm sorry.
Then you don't need to say
I'm not trying to be
anything right now. You don't need to say anything right now. I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to figure out how to tell the difference between somebody who thinks they're talking with God and someone who we can actually confirm is talking with God. Do you have a independently verifiable mechanism that Darrel and I can each use to tell whether you're in the category of people who are communicating with God or the category of people who think they're communicating with God but can't prove it?
I can show you how you can communicate with God, and when you are able to do that, you will understand and you will see.
That is a no, then. So the answer to my
No,
question
you will
was
see.
no.
You will understand.
No. The answer to my question, it was a no. You're just not willing to actually say it.
No, I'm not. Maybe I don't understand correctly then. But
I'll try it
from what I
again.
do understand,
Try it again. Listen. There are people
I am.
who think you don't need to tell me you're fucking listening. Every time you open your mouth after I say just listen, you're no longer just listening. There are people who think they're communicating with God and getting messages from God, and some of them are wrong, correct?
Correct. I agree with you.
Whether or not some of them are also right, I don't know. What I asked is, do you have an independently verifiable mechanism that would allow myself and Darrel to tell whether you are in the category of people who are wrong about talking with God or the category of people who are right about talking with God? That's a yes or no question. Do you have an independently verifiable mechanism that Darrel and I can use to tell whether or not you're actually talking to God?
Gotcha. I don't know for sure if there's a verifiable way. If somebody was to tell me that they talk with God, such as myself, They said that they received some answers. I'd have to listen to what they had to say and find out, is it something that was supposed to there's kind of a checklist I would kind of have as well.
So that's a no.
I wouldn't know for certain. Yeah,
So that's a no.
I wouldn't know for certain.
Cool. So when I said the answer was no, I was right. And then we went through it all again and got another no.
Correct.
Until the answer is yes, I don't
question.
need, until the answer is yes, I don't need to hear anything from you.
Sir, can I explain something that I think will get us to a level of agreement where I can explain to you how you can get to that state where you can talk to God?
If you don't have an independently verifiable method for telling the difference between when someone is talking with God and when they're not, then you have nothing for me at all.
But I can teach you how you can talk to God, how you can reach that state, and how you can receive answers.
Larry, let's say I do what you tell me to do. How would I know I'm actually talking to God if there's not an independently fucking verifiable method of testing it?
Because you would know by the vibrational state that you're in. You would know by what it's showing you.
No, Larry, that's not how any of this shit works. You're either delusional or you're not. And if you're stop interrupting me, Larry. You're either delusional or you're not. And if you're not, you don't just know it because of vibrations. Take the vibrator out of your butt, open your brain, and listen. In order to verify that you're actually getting messages from God, you cannot rely on your own independent feelings.
Sir, I know you don't understand my background, where I'm from, but I'm not a stupid person. And I'm trying to explain to you.
All right, let me mute you. I don't know your background, nor do I give a fuck about your background, nor is your background relevant at all. Is there anything about your background that includes a methodology for verifying that someone is actually communicating with a God? Yes or no?
Sir, I can teach you how
yes
you can
or
do
no?
it.
Yes or no?
Say it again. What's the question?
Is there anything about your personal fucking background that allows you to independently verify?
Bro,
why are you?
I can show you.
Okay, dipshit. Now you're on mute. Now you're going to have to listen. I'm asking you. You say, I don't know your background. You're right. I don't care about your background. You know why? Because you are irrelevant to whether or not there's a God, just as I am irrelevant. My personal background is irrelevant to the case you're making. Your personal background is irrelevant to the case that I'm making. The question that I asked, which I will ask again, is anything about your personal background relevant to the ability to confirm that someone is actually communicating with a God, yes or no?
Again, it's not about confirming whether somebody else has or not.
Yes or no?
No.
Yes or no?
Yes or
no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No for knowing if somebody else has. But yes,
Thank you.
I can teach you how.
Thank
I can
you.
explain how it works.
So if your background isn't relevant, why did you bring it up? I'm not the one being an asshole here. You're the one that is obfuscating and not engaging honestly.
That's why I said
if you'd stop acting like an idiot, I would stop treating you like one.
You're the one that's yelling and being an asshole. I'm trying to tell you there's a way. I have answers for you. There's things that you've
Listen to me. Larry, you don't have answers for anyone if you don't have an independently verifiable mechanism. All you have is feelings. Fuck your feelings.
No, it's not about feelings. It's not about
It is.
It's not.
How do you know which
Can
vibration? How do you know which vibration has anything to do with a God? What is that vibration?
Because all dimensions, what they have in common is dimensional states or vibrational states. And
Goodbye. Dimensional states and vibrations.
There's your woo.
Nothing that you're talking about is in any way tied to reality. It's feelings. Feelings, nothing more than feelings. I don't know,
You can
Darrel.
change it to vibrations.
He
We
tried
hear that a lot.
vibrations for a little while.
Right. I can't.
I'm not, by the way, all callers, if you need to call in and take up 10 minutes of the show to teach me how to use vibrations to convince myself that I'm talking to God, when there's no way for me to verify independently whether or not you've just engaged in teaching me how to engage in self-delusion, then you are wasting my time, and I'm not interested in becoming as delusional as you are. I'm happy. Oh, if you want, send me an email. Tell me step by step what it is you think I should do. I'll do it and make a fucking video out of it. I will start a whole new channel if I need to, of me doing all the batshit crazy stuff you guys want me to do to prove over and over again that you're delusional. Let's not act like you calling in to demand 10 minutes of my fucking show when you admit that you have nothing substantive to offer that is independently verifiable is somehow a weakness on my part. It's not the way this works. You want me to stick a vibrator in my nose while I'm smelling flowers and asking God to tell me how many numbers are in the winning lottery number ticket next week? I'll do it. But don't pretend like you have a way to confirm that you're talking with God if the answer to the question, do you have a way to independently verify that you're talking with God, is no. That's it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that your model is so fucking weak that the answer to, can you prove it, is no. Can you demonstrate it, is no. But no, Matt, if you just give me 10 minutes, I'll teach you how to tap into the vibrations in the dimensional blah, blah, blah. You're talking nonsense. You're talking bollocks. You're talking bullshit. Here we go. Let's get the theist caller who's called back now. Riley in Delaware, thank you so much for calling back a couple times. I hope we can help.
Hey, is this Matthew?
It's Matt. Are you not watching?
Oh, and Darrel. Oh, wonderful. Sorry, your voice just sounds a little bit different. My name is Riley. I just have a few questions for you guys, and I'd just like to thank you guys for having me on, and I thank both you and Darrel and Paul, the call screener, for his patience. My phone dropped out like 3 times. But I have some questions for you guys. Right now, I'm in the process of deconstructing my faith. I'm coming from kind of a Presbyterian Baptist type of background. I work in the ministry, and I've been just constantly being told I'm overthinking when I see kind of indefensible things about the Bible. I'd just like to ask you guys some questions and utilize your expertise. My first question, which I would just ask you guys respectfully to field, would be, what is your greatest defense against deism? Because I feel like since I'm deconstructing my faith, I'm kind of latching on to deism, but I want kind of to lean towards that atheist part, but I think having a kind of response from my past in Christianity to latch on to deism. So I just wanted to see what points do you guys have that would go against the deistic standpoint.
So deism is defined as a God that doesn't intervene in reality in any detectable way, right?
Yeah.
How could you ever have evidentiary warrant for something that doesn't interact with reality in any detectable way? If you do, you would be claiming that you can detect the undetectable, which is irrational, and that's why I'm not a deist.
Okay. All right. And what to kind of delve into that a little bit deeper, how would you relate that to creationism?
I don't know what you mean.
Riley, let me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could I interject here some?
Let me take over completely.
Okay. Well, Riley, what you and Matt have just interchanged around is an intellectual explanation, which is fine. Go ahead and do that as however you need to. But let me say that deconstruction is a journey, and it takes a while to go through it. And I want to say you're asking the right questions. What I see in many people is they leave one religion and they move to a different basis for belief. They explore that for a while, then they move to another basis for belief. Where they end up is their business, and it is your business. So I want you just to feel like this is a journey. Find your own way. Whether you end up in deism or not, whether you end up as an atheist or not, I don't really care. I don't think Matt really cares. We just want you to have a good life. We want you to have the best life you can that doesn't involve magic. Well, at least not superstitious magic. And so you can ask all these questions, but you have to find your own answer. That's where I come down. And I want to help you. And we at Recover from Religion would be happy to help you answer some of these questions. But ultimately, it's your journey. Yep. Back to you, Matt or Riley.
Yeah, back to you, Riley. Hello. Nope, we
Did we
lost
lose
Riley
him again?
Yep.
Sorry.
All right, let's try this.
You know,
Josh
Matt,
is a thief in Missouri. Josh, thanks for waiting. You're on with Darrel and me.
Oh, hello. Is this me?
This is you, Josh.
Oh, hey, I'm from Montana, but that's all right.
Oh my
Missouri's
God!
just as well.
So the call screener listed it as MO, which is Missouri. I know that because I'm from Missouri, so I know I didn't get it wrong. But yeah, from Montana. There you go.
Okay. I just didn't want to take another Josh's time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Alrighty.
You're the Josh for us.
Very quickly. Yeah, very quickly. I just want to point out a few things that I think have been helpful for me. So I have a long history. I grew up in the church. I sort of got disabused of it, and then came back to it in adulthood. Not to the church, more just reading the New Testament, and then diving into the Old Testament too to figure out what the New Testament was saying. And there's some important things that I think are being missed here. So I really think that Jesus can be better understood as a kind of ancient psychologist who figured out a truth that is long-standing and stands still, but actually people don't believe in it. And the truth is that, so like we would say, it's common knowledge for me to say I am a person in the world having experience of the world. But it's also true to say that I am an experience of the world having a person. And the reason for this is that it is really not reasonable for us to assume that we have direct contact with the outside world. All of our sense perception is receptive. Okay, there's no sense in which I have like laser beam vision that I can like look out like we so often say in English. This is just not possible. All right. And so when you realize that consciousness depends on a biological body and a biological brain, it's this consciousness, not only that myself has changed from someone who merely reacts to the outside world, but that myself includes both the reactor and the experience of the outside world that leads to a transforming sort of redefinition, reimagination of what a human being is. And Jesus is the person who realized this, but realized it to such a great extent, okay, that his self-definition changed so that he is almost the realization of that experience being inside of us. And it is the sort of nameless and yet faithful and yet alive character of that aspect of our consciousness that got interpreted by a culture that at the time was a pre-scientific culture. It was an ancient culture. It used a lot of metaphoric poetics in order to understand what this guy was talking about. And all of that got sort of distorted by the cultures that were trying afterwards to understand.
Josh.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like what you're saying is Jesus, who the only reason you know anything about him at all is because there's the collection of books in the Bible, that the content there that describes that person is wrong, and you have a better understanding of that person. Where does that better understanding come from?
No, not at all. The Bible's not wrong. The Bible's not wrong.
Well, in the Bible, in the Bible,
it's metaphorical. It's not
in the Bible.
Yeah.
No, in the Bible, in the red letter stuff that Jesus supposedly says, did Jesus say that?
Well, he says things like, "I am the truth and the light." That's what he said.
Now, why is it, Josh, why is it that you can't answer the fucking question I asked and decided to answer a different question?
Because it's a false premise that you're operating under, and I'm trying to help you
out. No, it's not a false premise. You deceptive fuck. I said, did Jesus say the things in red letters or not? There's no premise. Shut up. I'm muting you. I asked a legitimate question because I'm trying to understand where the fuck you're coming from as you make up your babble. But I asked a straightforward question, which is, in the Bible, the stuff that's in red letter, did Jesus say that or not? That's a yes or no question that has absolutely no baggage. It is, Josh, do you think the red letter stuff is stuff that Jesus actually said or not? There's no baggage there. How can you fucking dishonestly accuse me of injecting baggage into a simple question about, Josh, do you believe that the red letter stuff is stuff that Jesus said? Would you like to start over, Josh, and try this again?
Okay, I suspend judgment like any good skeptic would.
You're not a good skeptic. And you're not a good listener.
That seems like
Did Jesus say the things that... It's not a dogmatic thing. I'm evaluating you. I'm evaluating you based on what you've actually done in this conversation. For the last time, Josh, the red letter stuff in the Bible, did Jesus say that or not?
I'm not a dogmatist on the question.
Goodbye, jackass. All right. Well, Darrel, we've had a good time. Or I have.
Yeah. Well, I've had a good time listening. I'm always amazed every time I'm on how people can get the simplest question from you and they never want to answer it. It's remarkably simple.
I know what it is, and it's partly my fault, and the frustration that comes out is absolutely my fault, because these people have watched something and they've already decided, they already know they have no way to demonstrate the truth of what they believe, and they already know they are completely outgunned when it comes to logical reasoning, skepticism, and identifying fallacies. And so it's much easier for them to claim that I'm doing something dishonest than that they are incapable of answering straightforward questions. And I, long ago, decided that I have zero fucks left to give for people who are going to try to accuse me of asking dishonest questions. The thing is, Josh, despite what he tried to avoid, has an interesting idea that Jesus was somebody who was onto something. But the problem, which I immediately identified, is the only information we have about Jesus comes from the Bible. And when you have the red letter edition of the Bible, where it shows, by the way, I'm getting ready to do a series of red letter videos where I go through what's in the red letter. And if you go through the red letters, you have to then address, did Jesus say this or not? When Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, take heed that you not do your alms before men to be seen of them, otherwise you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Did Jesus say that? The answer is yes or no. And then if he actually said it, then the question becomes, what did he mean and how do we know that? And if Josh has discovered some deeper hidden meaning into what Jesus purportedly said, then Josh could have, after he said, yes, I think Jesus said that, could have said, and I think he meant this, and here's why I think he meant this. And then we all could have been edified and lifted by the words of Josh and his robust understanding of Jesus. But Josh knows he's pulling stuff right out of his ass. He has no better foundation on which to say that psychology Jesus that was speaking in metaphor that he likes is more accurate than the Southern Baptist Jesus who wasn't psychology Jesus, or the Catholic Jesus, or the Pentecostal Jesus. He has no better foundation. And he knows that that question is coming next. He knows it. Because even though he's acting like an idiot, he's not one. We all know the questions that are there. Oh, but Jesus could have been doing this. That's cool. Hey, you know what else? There's Bong Rip Jesus. I really like Bong Rip Jesus. He was sitting around with his fishermen, leeching off the public good, letting other people feed him while contributing absolutely nothing to society, and just doing bong rips and going, dude, listen. When you pray, don't do what them other people do, because they like to stand out and show off and do it in front of everybody. Just go in your prayer closet and pray, man. And the disciples were like, whoa. And he's really trying to tell us that this public performance of religion is really bad for our psyche, man, because it makes us tribal. If you keep your prayer with God in the closet, instead of establishing a tribe, you're all one mind with the one God. And I need to go take a shower after talking with people like Josh, who think that everybody else, that the entire scholarship of Christendom has missed what he found when he was toking and reading. Well, I get it, Josh. It's cool stuff. But if you can't prove it and you have no stronger footing to stand on, then you're just sitting here and entertaining us with Bong Rip Jesus or psychology Jesus or the Jesus that you'd prefer. My only question is, who is the real Jesus? How do you know? And why is it relevant? That's it. Boom, boom, boom. That's all I care about with Christianity. We have a special caller.
Well, I would just say, no matter what, the psychology Jesus is pretty bad. Jesus was a terrible psychologist. Buddha was probably a little better, but not that much better. Yeah. What's the other caller?
This is a very special caller. This is Ron, who's an RFR volunteer.
Oh, cool. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Ron.
Hi,
Welcome to the show.
Robert. I think that's supposed to be Rob, if it's me.
Rob.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
It says
yeah,
Ron, but
Rob.
it's Rob. N and B are right next to each other on the keyboard, so it's probably just a quick typo.
Yeah, that was a great impression of George Carlin you just did, Matt, by the way. That's what that sounded like.
Thank you.
So, yeah, hi, Dr. Ray.
Hey, Rob,
yeah,
good to hear you.
Yeah, I'm glad I got through. I missed some of the show, so I didn't know if any of the other volunteers had gotten in. Am I the first today?
You are the first.
You are the first volunteer. And I don't know if you heard, Rob,
right.
but the at the beginning of the show, I read an email from someone, and I'm not going to reread it. I don't know if you heard it. Okay. I'm interested, and if you're not comfortable doing it, that's fine. I'm interested in if you are, I was like, if you were an RFR volunteer, you are a RFR volunteer. I'm an idiot. If you had that person contact you either in chat or on the phone or whatever else, what would your thoughts be? What would you be seeking as a goal in trying to help that person who's reaching out for help? I'd like people to get a feel from a volunteer of how common this is. Have you dealt with this before? What are you thinking when you're reading a message like that? The show is now yours.
Well, I mostly take phone calls, so we do chats and text chats and voice phone calls on the web. I like the calls better, so I do get messages like that. And one thing I wanted to clear up is a misconception of some people who decide to call us to volunteer. They think they're all going to be Matt Dillahunty and argue with people, right? So we rarely get people trying to convince us of something. They are mostly like the person who wrote that letter in psychological distress because of life circumstances. Maybe not as bad as that person's, but definitely in that range. So so that's what we do. We have resources we point people to. That's another volunteer role. There's a set of resources we have that are absolutely amazing. They're tagged with keywords. The team basically vets everything. They could be podcasts, they could be YouTube, they could be books, they could be online articles. And you like type fear of God or problems with family or, leaving a cult. And you will get all the hits that we have been already vetted and clear that these are good resources to give people. And people can access those themselves by going to our main page and hitting the resources button. Or, we agents can do it in real time while we're trying to provide support. So that's one thing we would do. The second thing is definitely somebody in that situation suggest the Secular Therapy Project.
Yep.
They may have sought therapy and it may have wound up being Christian counseling or something like that. Or even if it's not a Christian counselor, it is amazing how often a counselor will inject religion all of a sudden into a session. And if you're not a believer, it blows your confidence in that therapist. So we do that. And the other thing that I don't think was mentioned, or maybe I missed it, is we have. You mentioned community is important in that situation. We have an online community. This doesn't get advertised as much as the helpline, but we will definitely invite appropriate people to it. There are something like 30 channels where people can text chat with other people about a specific topic, including family. That's a big one. And they're all moderated by agents like me. We're trained to do that. So, no one's going to be inappropriate. And another resource I always point people to is our fairly new, well, it started when the pandemic started, is we have every Monday live streamed show. It's a Zoom session, and we have a speaker. Matt, you know this because you were a guest, right? You brought your snake, which was an amazing episode.
Thank you. I have. You say when I brought my snake as if I have one instead of 170.
That was such a large snake. I just pictured eating all the other snakes. Dr. Ray has presented numerous times on religious trauma syndrome. We've had topics from how to be a critical thinker to the details of other religions to how to solve problems. We have had psychologists on. So I would suggest anyone who's got any issues at all, even with family members who have issues, to tune into one of those shows. And besides the speaker talking, you get to chat in real time as the session with the speaker is going on to other people online. We have 60, 70, 80 people sometimes. And afterwards, we have a hangout where you get to talk to the other people over Zoom, sometimes 4 or 5 hours. So, those are great ways to build community, to find out what else is available to go on.
And Rob is the well-known skeptic.
Go ahead,
so he gets to talk. He's talked 4 or 5 times on RFRX. He's always a good presentation.
Yeah, that's another volunteer thing that people don't realize. So we're not just a helpline, as Dr. Ray mentioned. We do so many things. Since when I started, I thought that was going to be it because, the helpline gets mentioned on the Atheist Experience and the sister shows and your show. And I thought that's all that was done. No, then I found out about the online community they need moderators for. I wound up interviewing prospective agents who wanted to volunteer, to clear them or not. I then trained agents. I worked at moderating, as I mentioned, that online community. And then I joined the weekly RFRX show as, a support person. And now I've kind of become a co-host, a regular co-host. So there's behind the scenes things, as was mentioned. We always need IT people, anyone, web developers, in order to keep improving our software to give our agents as well as our clients better experiences. There's so much to do in our organization. It's amazing.
Hey, Rob, could you mention just how often you hear the kind of thing that was in that email? I think Matt was interested in that.
Yeah. Well, predominantly we get people, I would say, who are struggling with one of two things. I'll put the biggest categories, I think. One is the residual fear of hell, right? They maybe logically don't believe the doctrine of Christianity or Islam anymore, but that's been drummed into their head and they still wake up with nightmares. And they're doing Pascal's wager on what if I'm wrong? Maybe I should say there's a God. So we give them resources in that subject. And the other one is the community issue. It's losing your family. It's dealing with specific things like that. I would say that's almost 50-50. Maybe more in some regards, the community thing. And sometimes those go together. We rarely get somebody who is arguing with us that they hear voices and frequencies from God. And, we're taught not to engage if that happens, really. If I was free to give that guy an answer, I would say, how do you know it's not people from the future with the technology sending you vibrations back in time? I'm sure it's that. Prove I'm wrong. But we don't do that on the helpline.
That is and that's the reason I'm not on the helpline. One of many reasons, which I continually demonstrate. But it's great that you mentioned that's the question, Rob, because fundamentally the goal of the question I was asking, which is, do you have an independently verifiable way of telling the difference between somebody who's communicating with God and somebody who's not, is fundamentally the same as you giving a specific example. How do you prove it's not this? And that gets right back to what we were both saying earlier about Arthur C. Clarke and technology. The notion that I get that there are so many people who are incredibly passionate that they think they've tapped into something. Cool. How do you demonstrate it? Because lots of people think they tapped into something.
Right. My big one there, actually, which might resonate more with a religious person, a Christian especially, how do you know it's not the devil? Right? If the devil has such power, these supernatural beings, it even says that in the Bible, it can trick people, and there's examples of that in the Bible. How do you know that's not the devil?
Yep. Now, when I was a Christian, I had an answer for that. And it's basically the same answer that the caller was giving, was that he has a way of showing me how to do it so that I can know it's real. And the reason that doesn't work is because there is no way of doing this knowing it's real. Because when I was a Christian, and other Christians would say, oh, you can tell the difference between when God's trying to talk to you and when Satan's trying to talk to you. And I'm like, really? Okay, cool. How? I so far I've been unable to tell the difference. I mean, you're right, Rob. I just don't know. But they're convinced that they have an answer. I couldn't be fooled by the devil. Because God would protect me from that. Absolutely. God would not let the devil fool me into thinking he was God.
Yeah. So that reminds me, by the way, of another big category of people who call in. People have like almost out the door of their religion, and they think they've gotten a sign or a prayer that they did was answered. How do you explain that? That's a big conversation.
How do you explain that? What if the best explanation is that you're getting ready to make a major life-changing decision about whether or not you're going to continue to participate with a religion, and then you get something that you see as a sign. So either God waited until you were almost completely out the door instead of answering any of your questions or concerns throughout this entire deconstruction process in order to give you that thing that you needed. Instead of giving it to you at the start or middle of this journey, God waited till the very end. Or your brain is creating a self-defense mechanism to try to keep you from making a change that you're terrified of. Which one's more likely?
Exactly. And I have an interesting story you might appreciate. And I'm pretty sure, 90% sure, 99% sure it was you. You took a call. This might have been 5-ish years ago, maybe 6 years ago, from somebody who was almost out the door of Mormonism. And they were stuck because of a prophecy. Their mother had a prophecy that his younger brother was going to be a prophet. And then when his younger brother grew up to be old enough to talk, he started talking about, oh, I'm a prophet. And he couldn't buy that was just a coincidence. And it was either you or someone else I believe it was the Atheist Experience, gave him all the other options that could be. He is now a volunteer with our organization in charge of a department. I mean, he stepped out of it finally because of that conversation.
Yeah, he's one of our key leaders, by the way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not going to give a name, but yeah.
No,
he was a Mormon because prophecy is very big in Mormonism. So he's a Mormon. In fact, he was attending the Mormon University. What's the name of it? When this happened, when he called you, and he had to keep undercover for several years because they would have kicked him out.
I wonder. You say somebody called into one of the shows, like Atheist Experience.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I have another story. I've been waiting to hear from this person, and there's no way to ever verify it, which is why I wouldn't put much stock into it. I ordered a free copy of the Book of Mormon you can do that. I did it partly because I figure the more people that request a free copy of the Book of Mormon, the more they have to print and the more of their resources I can potentially drain off. Turns out they're never going to run out of copies of that. But when they send you the book, after you've had it for a little while, one of them will call you to ask you, hey, we sent you a free copy of the Book of Mormon. Have you had a chance to look at it? Have you had a chance to read parts of it? Do you have any questions? Is there anything that I could help you with? There was a young man who I'm pretty sure was on his mission, basically, and his mission was manning the phones for the Book of Mormon distribution network or whatever. And we were on the phone for quite a little while because I said, yeah, I just wanted a copy for me to have. I'm actually not only an atheist, but, a former Christian and debater. I wasn't expecting you guys to call, and I don't want to take up your time, arguing about your religion. And he's like, oh, no, that's fine. You're an atheist. And so he started asking questions, and he wanted to know why I didn't believe. And what, so I started going through everything. I'm giving this kid, my personal testimony as a Southern Baptist and me finding my way out. And then I start talking about facts about the history of the Mormon Church and Joseph Smith and con artists and how higher Egyptian isn't even a language, and there's all these other things, and I'm going through all this, and he's like, wow, that's interesting, that's a lot to think about. And I'm sitting here going, you do know this call's probably recorded, dude. They're gonna they're probably gonna be watching you. I always wonder what happened to that guy. And if somebody called up right now and said, I'm that guy and now I'm a Mormon preacher, I would have no way to prove it, and I wouldn't be surprised. And if somebody called up and said, I'm that guy and I'm a godless heathen, I'd have no way to prove it. And, but I still, it's one of those curious things forever, because you don't know how a particular conversation impacted somebody.
But I can confirm that story was true. I was wondering, so what happened was, once I met him as a volunteer, in fact, he was training me, I said, well, how did you get in? He told me the story that I just told you. And he said, really? He said, yeah, what episode is that? And I went back and listened to it. Yeah, that's his voice. That's him. I know for a fact that was him.
Sweet. Well, Rob, we really appreciate not only what you do for RFR, but for calling in to give that update. I look forward to responding to that email, directing that individual to both RFR and Secular Therapy. And if you have any parting words for people who are considering becoming volunteers with RFR, please go for it now. And I'm going to move on to Super Chats in a sec.
Yeah, one of the things we always say in the Recovering from Religion show, the RFRX show, and when we talk about the volunteer aspect, is that people get healing themselves out of helping other people. It's one of the best things you can do if you have any residual issues at all. I mean, people can't do it if they're in such a state that it's a problem. But if you got a lingering issue and you think you can do it, it's a great way to heal yourself.
Cool. I really appreciate that, Rob. And
all right.
thanks
for having me
taking
on.
time out.
Thanks,
to call
Rob.
in.
Take care, Dr. A.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Rob.
On that note, we have your Super Chats. And as I mentioned, all the Super Chats over $10. We're going to read them right now. And then once we're done with all those questions and everything else, we'll put a nice fat bow on the show.
Before you get started, there was one that got lost in the system. I can't get it put up, but it's from Jordan J. He sent $9.99 and it says, Matt, are you still in touch with your former roommate who first challenged your faith? Just wondering. Thanks, and go fuck yourself, Jimmy.
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's Sean. He dropped by the house not too long ago. I occasionally message him. We're still in the same town, but we don't interact as much. He just had his wedding anniversary. I was there at his wedding. I would imagine we'll be friends till we're dead. He's busy with his life and I've been busy with mine, but yeah, that's my brother from another mother. My brother from my actual mother is probably also in chat and is just one of my favorite person. Here we go. From $10 from William Mattis. My doggos say they are my God now. LOL. I don't know how you'd prove whether they were right or wrong.
That should
even
be
if they
cats.
were talking. No. Cats
Are there any
evil.
plans to have Daniel Dennett on the line? Wow.
Interesting. I can answer this, Danny. There are no plans to have Daniel Dennett on the line. In the entire time that I've been in the movement, Dan and I have exchanged one email and have never been in the same place at the same time. Despite I've done events with Dawkins and Harris and other things. Dan, while he's an outspoken atheist and a brilliant philosopher, isn't active in the atheist secular community in any significant way. You're unlikely to see him at very many conventions and things like that. From time to time, you might see him, at some sort of humanist thing or doing an event with Dawkins or whatever else. But yeah, I don't know if we'll ever meet. I don't know if he'll ever be on one of the shows. And I don't know how much we might agree or disagree on outside of the amazing perspectives that he's taught me on free will and consciousness, and the intuition pumps in his various books have been incredibly informative to me. But I would suspect, in much the same way that I disagree with Dawkins on some things, and I disagree with Sam on some things, I would imagine Dan and I disagree on some things too. But I'd still like to hang out and have a talk someday. But there's nothing planned. 666, perfect, from Hell's Bells. I cannot stay. Wanted to say hi to Dr. Ray and Matt. Please check out all the wonderful things at the Recovering from Religion website. Will do. Thank you, Hell's Bells.
One of our top volunteers, by the way. Yep. Greg Mikowski, thanks for the show. I'll have to watch tomorrow. Well, okay. Thank you, Greg.
Hey, that's what's going on. Everybody's decided they need to watch tomorrow. Thank you, Greg. Here we go. Here's Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. $10. Just checked Austin flight/hotel prices for the upcoming solar eclipse. And well, shit, maybe I should just drop by the following weekend and have Jimmy hold up a basketball up to the sun for a bit. You could do that. I tell you this, Eric, there will be some people who are coming down. I hadn't considered the fact that the prices on flights and everything might be exaggerated. If you need a place to stay, if you can get the flight down and need a place to stay, you are welcome to stay in our guest room. So, well, I say that. Honey, is it okay if Eric stays in the guest room?
Yes, Eric can stay in the guest room.
Thank you. Now, the problem is I already offered it to other people as well, but they said they were going to rent a place. And if their rental place falls through, then they get the guest room and Eric will have to sleep on a blow-up mattress in the snake room. But we'll figure out a way to make it work. Thanks so much, Eric.
Is that mine, Matt? RFR is a fantastic place to volunteer. Thank you, Dr. Ray. Who is this from? Tess. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're just feeding you all the ones that are from your own volunteers.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, Tessa's a great volunteer, I'll just say. This is cool.
$10 from Monkey to Typewriter. Maybe if you get Larry to vibrate you while Ram gives you a massage, maybe that'll get you to God. For Dr. D, I'm raising a kid with a religious ex. Any advice for helping him avoid religious trauma?
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, take him to church, but take him to lots of different churches. Expose your kid to lots of different angles and belief structures. If your partner's going to take him to church, why, you have as much right to take him to church too. So take him to see some Mormons and some Buddhists and some Muslims, so that by the time they get to be about 15 or 16, you can have a very intellectual discussion about the differences in all the religions. And hopefully that'll inoculate them.
Sweet. $20 from John Kennel. Here's a 20. Where's the cookie? I don't know who promised you cookies, but you should probably talk to Jen, since Jen's the one with cookies. In the meantime, though, John, if you get down to Austin, I'll definitely give you a cookie. Like I'll have I'm not supposed to keep cookies at the house, but I do. Or keep things at the house that I'm not supposed to have. And if I don't have any cookies, damn it, I'll go get some cookies and hook you up that way. But
$10 from one and only Smitty. Heard Matt's a board gamer. Thanks for supporting the hobby, RFR. Sounds awesome too. All right.
There you go. Yeah, I have a massive board game collection, but honestly, this is going to sound really bad. Arden and I've been playing for years, and Arden and I used to play pretty regularly when we first got together a few years ago. Because it was like COVID locked everything down to where I wasn't able to have people over for board games. And then we just kind of barely got back into it and started having people over. And then there were 50 million distractions. I bet it's been 10 months since Arden and I even played a board game with just the two of us or with anybody else over. Let's fix that. And we can fix that pretty easy. Just in case some people, if you get a super chat in while I'm doing some wrap up stuff here, I'll keep an eye on it and we'll still read it. I have a couple of regular announcements and a couple of extra announcements. First of all, I posted about an email that I got from someone who may or may not have been the individual who was offering to bring me to India to massage me into believing that God exists, which it's a very tempting offer. But this email says, I dare you to an open debate, and I will prove that the God of Sanatana Dharma is real. You guys could do all you want with your religions, but your arrogance is infesting the minds of Indians, and they are losing faith in God. But this has to be a neutrally moderated debate, hence you shouldn't be hosting. I'm staking $5,000 of my own money, and I will prove you that God, Paramatma, I don't know how to pronounce it, is real. If your livelihood is dependent on your debates, you are free to reject my offer and continue your narcissistic debates. But if you want to know life-changing truths, I'm the guy. And so I said, I frequently participate in debates hosted by neutral or even hostile third parties. It's literally my job. I'll be doing a debate this month at a Christian church in Tampa. It's strange, though, that you could know about me and not know this. I have no idea why you feel the need to attempt to insult me, but that doesn't make it more likely that I'll accept. I hope you're not the guy who offered to massage me to prove a God. That said, I might be willing to debate you for $5,000 plus expenses if travel is required. Here are a few questions. Where is this debate going to happen? Who's moderating it? What would the subject be? What's the format? And when would this debate happen? 5 questions I asked. And I said, if your answers to those preliminary questions are acceptable, we can move on to the planning stage. The email that I got back was, this is the entirety of the email. Would you like to defend materialist atheism, spelled incorrectly, as a completely logical and scientific and approach to life? I don't think it is. That's the whole email. None of the questions I asked. And instead of talking about how he's going to prove God, asked if I wanted to defend materialist atheism. And so I sent this back. You said you would prove God, which means you're the one defending a position, not me. Meanwhile, you're trying to dictate what my position should be while clearly not knowing that atheism and materialism aren't explicitly connected and neither is an approach to life. That would be like me saying, would you like to defend the God of Samantha Dharma as a fully tested and confirmed cure for cancer? Meanwhile, I asked specific questions about the debate and you answered none of them. You are a time waster who doesn't understand the subject and can't follow simple instructions. The price is now $10,000. So I'll wait and see if there's a $10,000 potential check in there for me. A couple super chats came in while I was reading that one. First one from poor Claire. So there's going to be a gathering for fans on the weekend of the eclipse. No, originally we were going to have LineCon the weekend of the eclipse, but after discussions with Jimmy, it got moved. We're now looking at, I think, October, but we don't have anything solid. But there will be some people who are still coming up here. Some of them are people who are part of the Netline network. And that's why I count Eric among those. And there may be some friends and family and fans around for that. But yeah, we're definitely going to be looking at the clips. So thank you for that super chat, Claire. And another super chat that came in from Doobly-Doop. Thanks for the show. You guys are great. I love it when Dr. Darrel Ra is on. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy. And even though these aren't popping up on the screen, a third one has come in, which I'll hit as well. And that's $10 from Jason. Too bad you can't hang up on an email, Matt. Oh, I certainly can. I have blocks and plenty of features like that. As a reminder, tomorrow's the Transatlantic Call-In Show with Katy and Arden. For the 3rd week in a row, the OG trans experts will be here to answer all of your questions and to point out why you are or aren't terrible or confused, and to try to be a much more comforting interaction than I could ever be on some subjects. Sunday will be me and Jimmy on the Sunday show. Monday, Skeptalk will be Forrest and Aron. Tuesdays, Chewed Gum will be Alyssa Lube with Erica Gutzik-Gibbon. I hope I'm saying it right, because that's what I was told to say for Alyssa's last name. And if it's not, then she's just going to hate me. But next week's hang up will be with Nick Fish from the American Atheist, because the American Atheist Annual Convention is coming up at the end of this month over Easter weekend, which is also my birthday weekend. And I will be in Tampa, Florida, doing a debate on the resurrection on Friday evening and flying back Saturday so that I can be here on Sunday the 31st to talk about it, to enjoy Easter Sunday and my birthday with my love down the hall. Another super chat, $10 from Emery King. Matt, I don't know if you remember the call I had with you and Shannon about igtheism, but I thought more about it and I have more arguments. LOL. Thanks for the line and all you do. Awesome, Emery. Well, we can call in and maybe we'll get Shannon on, and then you can call back in and talk to both of us and we can see whose mind, if anyone's, has actually been changed. Anyway, let me wrap this up. First of all, huge thank you, Darrel. You are always welcome, my friend. I wish we could hang out more and talk more. One of these days we're all gonna be in the same spot again. I don't know what the excuse is for the past year or so, because it's not COVID. It's something else. But in the meantime, the work that the volunteers are doing with Recovering from Religion and putting together things like Psychotherapy Project, the visions that Darrel had, which I'll always credit him with and always be proud that I was there in any capacity at the beginning of the discussion to know what was happening, so that I would have the understanding of where to point people. Because as is the case with the email that I read at the beginning of the show, frequently I'm way out of my depth. You want to talk about logical fallacies? I got you. You want to talk about Mary the color theorist? You want to get into philosophical concepts? I'm enough of a self-taught, kind of hobbyist that I can engage on some of it. I'm not going to be teaching, logic courses at university, but I can hold my own for a while. You want to talk about arguments for the existence of God? You want to talk about skepticism? You want to talk about magic? You want to talk about snakes? You want to talk about snake genetics? You want to talk about any of that stuff like that? I'm there. If you need advice and counseling, I'm not your guy. I will always try to do my best. My heart breaks at some of the emails that I get in. And some of it breaks because I know that I have no idea what to say. And it's why I'm incredibly grateful for organizations like Recovering from Religion that are doing good, where people, not for clicks, not for money, not for super chats, not for any sort of recognition at all, are helping themselves get over their religious trauma and their interactions and their feelings about religion by helping other people deal with those issues, both deconstructing or not. Do not, if you are out there and you are questioning your religion, do not think that recoveringfromreligion.org is there to convince you that you're wrong or that you need to be an atheist. That's not the purpose. That's not the goal. That's not what they'll do in the chats. If you come out the other side of a conversation with RFR as a stronger believer, fine. The issue is, are you better off? Because this is for people who are struggling. This is for people who have questions. This is for people who are feeling isolated and alone and don't know who to talk to and can't engage with anybody. That's what these sort of things are for. We got 2 more super chats that just came in while I was doing that. I want to make sure I get those out, and then we're going to wrap this up. Abel Medina's $10 says, I can make something that looks like a banana appear in my hand. Matt, that's a quote. You got it. That sin is for us to Pashara. So yes, somebody referencing when a quote that I did about a banana, and I have some more lewd quotes about a banana, but the final super chat of the day, $10 from Adam. You get the final word. You too should fix that. Buy a crokinole board and open a bottle. I have a crokinole board and I have a bottle. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks to Dr. Darrel Ray for joining me again this weekend. I hope to see you soon, my friend. Thank you to Arden down the hall for producing this show. And a huge thank you to the apostate Paul for call screening and all of our volunteers who are in the chat. I'm saying more than I've ever said in my life, and it's because I'm flipping back and forth between my list of things to announce, watching Darrel nod his head, and then seeing the wonderful list of patrons who are here, patron producers. Patreon.com/call the line.